right? We're going live because we're doing it live. Ah. Okay. We're live here. Welcome to Hollywoke Hot Take, where we do it live. Ah. Okay. Chat is up. Everything's going, and I'm on time. Hello, and welcome to the live stream. I'm Tony D, and this is Little Joan. Little Joan has had her WALK, so she should be fine to sit here and be a good dog. So what's going on? As always, I start with a little recap of what happened. I guess I should recap a little bit over the holidays. Jeez. I did, the last event I did before today? What did I do? I did Valares today. JEC is here. Hi, hi, hi. Valares was, or is a lakeside restaurant in South Jersey in Sicklerville. I was a little worried because it was supposed to be an outside show, and then they switched it to the inside show, so I was very happy. Although I was using my outside backdrop, which is sort of a backup backdrop, so, but whatever. Went pretty good. Nothing really crazy to report. I do a lot of these shows, and they'll have a lot of crafters. It's all women, 90%. And so there'll always be a few with food, right? So they'll do like homemade cookies and cupcakes and stuff. But a lot of times it's like super overpriced. I mean, look, I get it, it's homemade, but so for instance, normally a cupcake at one of these shows will cost you $4, $5, $6, which is too much for a cupcake. Even if it's a decent sized cupcake, that to me that's too much. So today there was a girl there who had cupcakes for $2. Now they were a little smaller, but they weren't too small. They were like small cupcake, on the small side, I'll say. For $2, strawberry with a strawberry on top. Pretty damn good. I bought one. But then there was another crafter there, and her stuff looked amazing. Don't get me wrong, but she had cakes about this size, which is an okay size cake, I guess. But that was more like $6, $7. And then I was looking for something to drink because I got screwed at the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru. I always get an iced tea, and I needed my caffeine to wake up. And I'm used to pretty bad Dunkin' Donut drive-thru. Those of you who aren't in the States, Dunkin' Donuts is like your last-minute fast food caffeine fix. You either get coffee or iced tea. I always get iced tea. They used to have lemon. No lemon now. Sucks. But anyhow, Dunkin' Donuts, if the mix is bad, because they don't brew tea anymore at these places, it's too slow. But if the mix is bad or the brewer isn't clean, it sucks. And I've had some pretty bad iced tea in my time, but I really like iced tea, so I'm okay with it. But this time, it was so bad I couldn't drink it. I mean, it was awful. I think it tasted like mold, and I took one sip. I was like, oh. And I said, well, maybe I'm not used to it. And I took another sip and went, oh, no, this can't be right. I took one more sip. I'm like, I hope I'm not poisoning myself. But no, I can't drink this. That's how, much I love iced tea, that I gave it 3 attempts. And so I just held on to it. And I went back after the show and got my money back. That's how pissed I was. I was a little grumpy. I didn't have my caffeine. But that's about it. And then before that, I did on Thursday, I did the Hamilton Historical Society's event, which was really cool. I got a certificate. What did I do with that? It's somewhere around here. They did like several newspaper articles about me. They gave me a certificate. They bought books. They were very nice. They had snacks, refreshments. And they had refreshments today. So I'm like, this year I'm 2 for 2 on events with refreshments. They had, at the end, they had a charcuterie board that came out of nowhere. Like, the woman organizing went, "Oh, I have a charcuterie board for everyone," and I'm like, "You do? This is the best event ever." The only thing that topped it is one time I did the Pittsburgh Comic Con, and they cut a deal with McDonald's because they did some sort of charity thing where they just gave us all the cheeseburgers we could eat from McDonald's. Literally, they would roll out a massive pile of cheeseburgers, and you could have as many as you wanted. It was nuts. And, drinks and whatever. I don't think there were fries, because fries don't travel well from McDonald's. I don't know if everybody out there knows that. If you ever order McDonald's fries and they're delivered, they're probably a soggy mess, because they just don't last long. They depending on how, you either got to keep the bag open so they don't get soggy, but then they'll be ice cold, or you close the bag and they're soggy as F. Which is a shame, because I actually do like McDonald's fries quite a bit. I actually swore off of McDonald's for many years, and the only time I broke was a few years ago. I was just dying for some fries. I said, you know what? I'm just going to go to McDonald's and get a giant bag of fries and then eat it with my dinner. And I did. And I don't regret it. But I won't do it again, because it's not healthy. It's not healthy for a 57-year-old to eat a giant bag of fries. Anyhow, what else? That's about it. That's about it for me. Just doing what I do. Traveling South Jersey, telling folks about the Jersey Devil. I finished book 14 of the Pineys, by the way. It's going to have a lot of pirate stuff in this one. So that's coming out in March. I got to start on 15, but I'll give myself like a week or two. I got to get some more gigs. I need some more gigs for February. So if any of you people are from South Jersey and you need someone to tell you about the Jersey Devil, I'm here for you. All right, let's get into it, Joan. Enough about the Jersey Devil and me. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about at Hollywoke Hot Take, movies, and how terrible they are. First, we're going to check the numbers, as we often do, to see what the box office was. Now, there was some controversy and some hope that Night Swim would take the #1 slot because it did so well yesterday. But that appears not to be the case, even though it is in a comparable amount of theaters as Wonka. It only did 12 million, but that's not bad. It looks like a low-budget affair. It's #2. Wonka is still #1 at 14.4 million. This movie has legs. This movie is doing well. This is, fourth week. And it's #1 at the box office. 465 million? Yeah, you're going to get a sequel to this. I hate to tell you. The Wonka universe has begun. I hear it's good. I'm not interested. I'm just not. I like Gene Wilder, and this movie feels completely unnecessary. Look, Timothée Chalamet, I'm sure he's very talented. Give him a new movie. Give everybody new stuff to do. Stop doing these prequels and spin-offs. I just hate them with a burning passion now. I'm sick of them. I get it. You own Wonka. Company that made Wonka, Warner Brothers. Good for you. You got a hit, finally. But you know what gets hits too? A $30 million original movie. For the money you spent on Wonka, I'm sure you could have done 3 or 4 movies. Let's see what you spent on this thing. $125 million. Yeah, you could have done 5 movies at $25 million apiece. Decent movies too. I just think you spend too much money on too few films. But okay, I mean, that's money. 450 million ain't nothing to sneeze at when you only spend 125 million, even with the advertising. Yeah, that's a good 200 million. Night Swim, It's a horror movie about a pool. Yes, it's an in-ground pool. 17 million worldwide, 17.6. That's not bad. What's the budget on this thing? No budget. I can't imagine it cost a lot of money to shoot a horror movie in a pool. I mean, this is something I could shoot in my neighbor's pool. I mean, I can't imagine this cost a lot of money. The only thing that costs money in this is Kerry Condon, who's in it, who's from the Banshees of Inisherin. I think she's the mom. So, seems fine. I have no interest in it because I think it's a dumb premise, like a haunted pool. I mean, I guess it could be good, but I don't know. If you had a haunted pool, wouldn't you just fill it in, or not go swimming, or build a new pool? It doesn't. It's like having a haunted, I don't know, scooter. Oh, it's a haunted scooter. Well, don't ride the scooter. I can't. I must ride the scooter. You don't have to ride the scooter. You don't have to go swimming. You can go swimming somewhere else. Oh, it's night swim. Look out. Just seems dumb. Number 3, dropping from number 2, is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Has cracked 100 million. Domestically, 334 million worldwide. That's not bad for a movie that cost 205. Well, that's probably not breaking even. But it's hard to say. They didn't really advertise this as hard, so maybe they didn't spend $200 million on this. They definitely spent $205 million on the budget. Oh yeah, that's a low estimate, I think. So this could be money. This could be money because they didn't expect this to do well. And that seems to be okay. You know, this will probably park at about 250 or 350, 370 maybe, somewhere in that range. That, you know, unless they pissed a ton of money away on advertising, and I can't see them doing that. They saw the writing on the wall. I mean, they advertised it, but they didn't kill themselves doing it. So I can't imagine they spent $205 million advertising this thing. I can't. I got to think at Warner Brothers they said, "Nah, pull back." What could they have spent? Maybe 50 million, even worldwide, even in the countries where, I don't know, they expected to do well with this. How much could they have spent? And on what? Commercials, showing the commercials, I guess. So, I think that's probably a money or a break-even situation for them. Number 4, dropping from number 3, Migration. The word is this movie cost $72 million. This is a cartoon. And it's up at 150 million worldwide. That's at least break even. So that's not awful. I mean, it's not great. JEC, they filmed Aquaman like 4 times, LOL. I think that's, though, built into the $205 million budget. Because they built it into the budget for Aquaman and a few of the Warner Brothers projects. I know they did that for Justice League, and they did that for Aquaman, the first Aquaman movie. They built it in, like, we're going to shoot this thing, then we're going to show it to focus groups, then we're going to shoot more of it. Which is a dumb way to shoot a movie. Dumb. Well, I shouldn't say dumb. It's a weak way to do it. So, what they're trying to do is avoid a disaster. And the process kind of does that. So, if you have, like, a movie that's so horrifically bad that your average audience can just look at it and say, "Oh yeah, this sucks," then showing it to a focus group probably works, right? Because a focus group can say the obvious at least. They can say, "Oh no, this is terrible. I hate this character, I hate this actor," or whatever. I'm sure they all hated Amber Heard. She's hot, but so they can take a very terrible movie and make it watchable, I think, with this process. But here's the kicker. A great movie or a really good movie is not going to survive that process. It's going to get changed. Because the people doing this process don't know when to stop. Where do you stop? Right? If you've ever seen that Simpsons episode with Mel Gibson, which is a friggin' classic. So Mel Gibson comes to Springfield and shows his latest movie, which is a remake of when Jimmy Stewart goes to Washington. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, it's called. So it's a remake of that. And so Homer's the only guy in the audience who hates the movie because he's jealous of Mel Gibson because Marge likes him and he likes all his action movies. So Mel focuses on on Homer's card because he's the only guy in Springfield to hate the movie. And so based on that, he changes the entire movie. And Homer wants like a shoot 'em up, and so he reshoots the whole movie in which Mel kills everybody in Congress and beheads the president. And it's all about focus groups. And so that's what they do. Everybody liked the movie before Mel changed it, and then after they change it, everybody hates it. Except Homer, who then is in it, which is also funny. So focus groups are dumb. It just shows you that nobody in Hollywood knows what they're doing, and they're trying to spread the blame around, right? So if you show it to a focus group and they tell you to make all these changes and you follow the group and the movie still tanks, well, you could say to your boss, well, it's not my fault. The focus group told us they wanted this. Yeah, I know that sounds stupid, but it's kind of not your fault, if that's the process. But if you have a great movie, there are people in the focus group who may not recognize that. It may upset them, right? You may have, what's a good example? Like something that's controversial, right? It's a good controversial movie. It's not, trying to think of one that's not political, but that's tough. I don't know, say a movie like Serpico, right? Serpico is this movie about police corruption in New York City. It's a classic. But for its time, it came out, I think, in the late 70s. And Al Pacino stars, great movie. But back in the 70s, detective shows were the thing of the day. Like, TV detective shows were everywhere. Aurelius is here. Welcome. That's also how bureaucratic regimes work. That is true. That is true. You're going to get me all political, Aurelius. So in the 70s, you couldn't turn on a TV without seeing a detective show. There was Kojak and McCloud and The Streets of San Francisco and all these shows, the Rockford Files. And they all involved detectives solving mysteries and driving cars and shooting at guys, Barnaby Jones, all these crazy shows. But Serpico, Aurelius, bunch of people trying to keep their heads down and not lose their jobs, taking no risk, making no sacrifices, no one following passions. Well, just trying to describe Hollywood. Yes, that is true. That's very true. Because they don't have a passion. As an executive, your passion is money. Your passion is not art. Your passion is money. And to make the biggest pile of it. So, Serpico comes out, and Serpico's a different kind of police movie in that it's not about a guy solving a mystery. It's about a competent police detective who's hampered at every turn by a corrupt police department and is nearly killed over it, and he eventually exposes the corruption. It's based on a true story, but he gets shot in the process. The corrupt cops set him up during a bus to get shot. And it's a great movie. But if you tested that movie at that time, people would have said, "Oh, I don't like this. It's not like the detective shows I like. You know, when McCloud gets the bad guy, it's like the bad guys win in this movie," which is kind of like the way it ends. He wins, but he sort of doesn't win. You know, Blazing Saddles famously tested in a focus group, and the studio came to Mel Brooks and said, "Here's a bunch of changes," and Mel didn't make any of them, and then released the movie. And the studio, I guess, didn't check. It was a little harder to check those things in those days. There were like physical copies of movies that they sent out. And, you know, fortunately it was a big hit. It's considered a comedy classic, but it could have blown up in his face in that that movie could have been released. It could have not done well, and the studio could have said, "Hey, you didn't listen to our suggestions. Now we're going to sue you, or we're going to never hire you again," or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Mel obviously knew what was funny and was very passionate about the movie he had just made. And artists who are good at their jobs know when something's good. You know, I described in my writer's rant the other day how I was brought in on a project because the previous writer was so terrible, the script like barely made any sense. So I was brought in and I fixed the script and wrote it, and it was coherent. And then the people of the cast read it, and the various people who worked on it, and they all went, "Oh," because they finally understood what the movie was about, and now it made sense. And it made a lot easier to shoot the movie, even as a whole piece, because people knew what they were driving at. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 were very clear to them. Whereas the previous writer, it was a bunch of convoluted nonsense. I'm not going to tell you who that was. That wouldn't be nice. But you can tell, you know. I mean, maybe he just wasn't experienced. I don't know. I didn't really know him. So, yeah, these focus groups, they're not going to help. I mean, they'll help. I mean, I just don't think they should do them. I really don't. If you have executives who can't even decide what a good movie is, they shouldn't be Hollywood executives. The old school guys knew what a good movie was, or they at least knew what it was, as they say. You have it, kid. You have it. And they knew it just simply because they could talk to you and, you know, you can tell somebody who has it. They are, first off, they are super excited to be anywhere doing what they do, right? And they're just good. They're so talented, they just ooze talent. You know, they're good at every level of whatever their sphere is. You know, actors who are really, really good, they can do accents, they often can sing and dance and play instruments. They're incredibly talented in what they do. You know, for writers, it's harder to tell. It requires you to read, but a usual indicator is a guy who writes books, screenplays, plays, you know, other realms of writing that you go, "Oh, okay, he's had success here and there. He's done all these things. People like him. People like his work." That's an indicator. I mean, it's not a foolproof plan, especially these days, because there's so many guys who are well liked in the industry who seemingly do well. They're actually terrible in terms of their talent, but they've gotten to where they've gotten because they're really good at schmoozing people. There are guys like that in the comic book industry who I would love to name. I would love to name them and roast them right now, but I won't. Because they would sue me, but you know, they're not talented at all. But I know that behind the scenes, they're amazing at getting work, and they keep getting work somehow. Clint Miller's here. Good evening. Hello, Tony JEC. I'm glad to make your acquaintance, Aurelius. Oh, you haven't met Aurelius? He's been here before. He's very famous Roman emperor. Um, so, to talent can be, I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it is now with producers. It's hard to find a talented producer, believe it or not. It's hard to find a talented editor in comics. I think that's part of the main reason comics are so in the toilet. Really, the first step was they gutted the editorial departments. I was famous for getting the business card of a Marvel Comics editor, and within the month they'd be fired because the turnover, not because of me, but because of the turnover at Marvel was so insanely high. You couldn't keep guys in the position. They didn't want it. Nobody wants to work in comics and publishing. It's a bottom tier job for most people. There's a handful of guys who actually love comics and want to be part of it, but these days those guys aren't hired at all. They're actively avoided by Marvel Comics and some of the other comic book companies, I believe, at least according to some of the reports I've heard, that they actively look for people who have never done comics before. And that is, it used to be the opposite problem. They used to be very incestuous. Now they're the complete opposite. They hire people who have no idea what comic books are about because they're trying to get this new thing going, and it hasn't worked, and they haven't changed course yet. But anyhow, I digress. Getting back to the numbers. Number 5, Anyone But You. Number 5 last week. This movie's in its 3rd week, and it's doing steady business. Oh, I forgot. Migration did 10.5 mil. Anyone But You is actually up this week in the 3rd week. Did 9.5 mil. Wow. That's more than it did last week. That's pretty good. This is Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. And I got to say, both of these, I'm not a romantic comedy guy, but I watched the trailer on this. They have excellent chemistry, and they're both very charismatic. So you watch it, it's not horrible. I mean, to someone who, I don't like romantic comedies, I watched this trailer and I thought, that looks like a good movie. If I could get a date and take her to the movie, and she dragged me to this movie, this looks very tolerable. Yeah, and Sydney Sweeney is smoking. She's a smoke show. So I think the premise of the romantic comedy, it's always about a wedding or something. They pretend to be a couple, but they're both interested in, I think, the couple that's getting married. I think they want to split up the couple and date the parts, something like that. But then they fall in love and they end up with each other. So doesn't look bad. It's done 58 million, and I bet it doesn't have the budget, but I bet the budget wasn't a lot. It is shot in a tropical paradise, but I bet this wasn't over 30 mil. I mean, Glenn Powell is kind of a name. Sydney Sweeney is kind of a name, but they won't command huge salaries. And I don't think they got a tremendous amount of advertising, but because it really felt like a hotel movie. Number 6, The Boys in the Boat. Sounds too much like The Boys from Brazil to me, but it's not what it's about. It's about it's a sports movie about rowing. 6 million. I hear it's not bad, but I have zero interest in it. It's in its 2nd week. That's not bad. I mean, but this is still a terrible box office overall. None of these movies are really hits. If it was a hit, you'd see some movie doing 50 mil. But Boys in the Boat looks expensive because it's a period piece. And it has no international box office. It did 33 million. I don't know if that's money. I doubt it. The Color Purple, the musical movie, drops from 4 to 7. Oosh. In its second week, dropped 59%. That is not good. But this was a dumb idea. But it did 54 million the first week. Is that money? I don't know. Maybe. They might not have spent a lot of money on this film, but it is a period piece. On the one hand, it's a giant advertisement for the Broadway show, which I'm sure will come roaring back, and the soundtrack, because there's a soundtrack, which will make them some money. But on the other hand, I don't know. It's a period piece. They probably had to get the licensing and the rights to the music and everything. Carter Chain, I can't believe it did even 54 mil. I mean, the first movie's fine with Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, it's a standard drama, you know, about an era where people weren't nice, I'll say. It's not even, I mean, it's more about domestic abuse than anything. I saw it. Danny Glover's in it, who's very good. I like Danny Glover, but I mean, I don't know why I saw it. I think I was still in my phase of seeing every movie that came out. But, you know, the musical? I don't understand how you even do a musical about domestic abuse. I don't like when you hit me in the face. I mean, what are the songs? Please stop beating me. Clint Miller, we need an Olympic curling movie. Apparently they had that. I made that joke last week, and somebody said, oh yeah, they had that movie, and looked it up. What the hell was it called? Something about, oh God, I can't think of what it was called. It was something about sliding or sweeping the snow or sweeping the ice, or something about that. Oh God, some term they use in curling. But yeah, I mean, so The Color Purple was a book, then it was a movie, then it was a Broadway show. Now it's gone back to a movie. I'm sure there's a soundtrack. And then after this, I don't know, the cartoon? Like, how much more could you do with this thing? You know? I don't get the obsession with it. I really don't. And I really don't get what the musical's about at all. Unless they completely change the story. You know. And instead of, I don't know, escaping her terrible domestic abuse, the main character gets a job singing somewhere. I don't know. Oprah Winfrey was in it, by the way. There's a famous scene of Oprah Winfrey taking a pee outside in a dress. It's a weird scene. I don't know why they filmed it. It was, I forget why. I forget why she has to pee out in the middle of the road. But that's part of the movie too. It's not a fun movie. Which is why it's weird they made a musical. You know? It's like, I am peeing in the middle of the road. I don't like this. Seems not like a good song. I don't like a lot of musicals. I liked House of Book of Mormon, and I like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and that's about it. That's about it. But both of those are kind of comedies. Number 8 is The Iron Claw, dropping from 7. This was a low budget affair, I think. It only made 24 million. We have a budget on this thing? Nope. Yeah, I don't know. I thought this movie would have done better because it's about wrestling and there are a lot of wrestling fans. But it may have been too long since the Iron Claw has been active that fans don't really remember them. It's like too late, you know. They weren't that famous. They were pretty famous, I guess. I don't remember them that far back. Seemed to be a fine movie. I mean, seemed to be a good subject matter in the world of wrestling. I mean, there's a lot of tragedy there, or a lot of drama anyway. Um, but yeah, that doesn't seem. Maybe it'll do better on streaming. Number 9 is Ferrari. This one stars Adam Driver as the inventor of the Ferrari. 22 million worldwide. Looks fine. Again, I expected it to do a little better than that. I'm sure it had a bigger budget than 22 million. That's probably not money. Oh wait, yeah, here's the production budget. 95 million. Yeah, that's not good. That is not money. They got a long way to go just to crack 95 million, and they ain't gonna make that. No. They're at 2.5 million this week. Nah, this movie's done. That is a big loss for Neon. That's a lot of money to spend on that movie too. I would have greenlit it. It's a car movie, you know. Car movies usually do pretty well, but I think there were too many of them right in a row. You know, you had Gran Turismo, which is more of a racing movie than a car movie, but still a car movie. Then we just had that other one. I can't think of what it was. That one did okay, and now this, like right within, I don't know, 6 months or a year to each other. It seems like a lot of car movies, but still, you'd think Ferrari would have brought people in. Maybe people don't like Adam Driver because he was also in 65 this year. He was in that movie where he's the patriarch of a family and they have to escape some sort of disaster. I forget what that was called. He was in that drama, I think, in the beginning of the year. Or was that last year? Where he gets divorced. Maybe people are just sick of him. He just wasn't enough to carry the movie by himself. I don't think anybody super famous is in it. Or it just might be that Neon didn't spend enough money advertising the damn thing. They're not that big. But, yeah, that's not good. That's not good. 22 million. See, this is why you got to keep your budgets low. $22 million on a $95 million film. Here you got Night Swim. Night Swim will easily make $22 million. I bet it didn't cost nearly that, anywhere close to $95 million to shoot. You don't want to shoot a movie above $30 million unless you know it's going to be big. I say. $30 million is more than enough to shoot most movies. Even movies with some action in it. Unless the thing is like a Marvel movie or Terminator or so big budget set pieces and special effects, and although celebrity's not worth a damn anymore, celebrities, big name stars, I mean, imagine if they had shot this thing for $30 million with a different actor. I mean, it would have been fine. 22 million at this point, well, wouldn't be gangbusters. You could certainly shoot a movie like Ferrari for 20 mil, 25 mil, I would say. Just can't show as much racing, I guess. Number 10. Number 10? Up from 12? No. Yeah, it's up from 12. Poor Things. Somehow did 2 million this week. It's weird. It's dropping out of theaters, but did slightly better. Must have got some air from advertising or whatever. This movie, it's not my cup of tea. It's feminist Frankenstein, from what I hear. 14 mil. It's probably not money, because it looks kind of a pricey movie. No budget here, but Poor Things had some effects, has some decent names. Um, they said Defoe was sitting in makeup for hours. That's usually pretty expensive, so I'm gonna call that one a loser. Still at 14 mil, I don't think that made money. But this is also Oscar bait. They're trying to shove this down the Academy's throat. Oh, it's so daring. So daring. A feminist Frankenstein, you say? I don't think people care about the Oscars anymore. They've kind of ruined it, but they certainly don't give a crap about the Golden Globes. Oh my God. There's a lot of Golden Globes news this week, which I'll go over, but. So, Poor Things, I don't think so. I don't think it moves the needle. Drop into 11 is The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Why don't you add a few more words to the friggin' title? What are you trying to cover up the entire marquee? Hunger Games people? This movie actually did okay, I think. For a budget of 100 mil. Allegedly. I would have guessed more, but that's money. That sounds like money to me. Even if they spent 100 million of advertising, they seem to spend a lot of money advertising this. So, yeah, you're going to get the rest of the sequels, and terrible Rachel Zegler's career is saved. I mean, this is her first movie that made money, and they kept putting her in movies. First movie she was in was a flop, and that was Woke Side Story. Snow White is done. I mean, you'd think her career would be over. Nope. Nope. It's kind of strange that she keeps getting work, I think. But now that she's been in a movie that made money, oh, you'll never get rid of her. Number 12 is Godzilla -1. Our boy. 1.7 million. 72 million. This is big money because it only cost $15 million to make. And that's how you make a movie, folks. That's how you make a movie. If Ferrari only cost $15 million, that would be in the black. That would be in the black. Godzilla is totally in the black because the Japanese know what they're doing. They're trying to make a good movie because they have to. Most movie companies, they have to make a good movie just to get noticed by Hollywood. It has to be so good. Hollywood goes, oh, looks like this is doing some business. Let's buy the rights to this. And then it goes to Netflix and a few other places, and it does well. So, good. If only the American movies would adopt that kind of attitude again. We used to have that kind of attitude. Now there's too much money. There's too many people involved. And, I don't know. They just try to make things product rather than movies. So, I still got to see it. Number 13, The Boy and His Heron. 1.721 million. As opposed to just under Godzilla's 1.275. In its fifth week, though. 138 million. It's making more, but it's a cartoon. I'm not so psyched to see it. If I see it, I see it. I definitely want to see Godzilla -1, though. And I'm not a huge Godzilla fan. I like Godzilla, but it's kind of always the same movie. But this one sounds interesting with the World War II angle. Number 14, Trolls Band Together. God, when will this movie die? 1.2 million. In its 8th week. It's made 202 million. Aurelius, I wonder about that. I keep seeing non-US movies slowly catch up scale and effect-wise to Hollywood. Russian I can't read that word. Oh God. Hold on. I can never there. I'm gonna just move up the chat. Russian disaster movies seem to be thriving genre too. Yeah, because they're making plenty of movies overseas. Like, for instance, quick trivia. I found this out. I don't know if I found out about it in the live stream, because my guess was India when I was talking about who produces the most movies, and the answer wasn't India, although they produce a ton of movies. The real answer is Nigeria produces a ridiculous amount of films. Now their quality's way down, I say. No offense to the Nigerian Nollywood people, but they're still learning things. I swear to God, half their cast look like they called people off the street and say, hey, you want to be in a movie? Okay, the clothes you're wearing are fine. Just come in here and say things. That's really how their movies look. They look like they shot them in a day using people off the street who can kind of say the lines. But they make a ton of them. I guess they're making money? I don't know. I think they show a lot of their movies on TV, but they're shooting so many movies in so many different parts of the world now, and now Hollywood is all about diversity, so they're looking for movies from other cultures. The South Koreans, of course, are knocking it out of the effing park. I mean, the Japanese are no slouches, but the South Koreans, they got some really good movies. I would put them on par with Hollywood in a lot of respects. The Indians too. I mean, the Indians are doing some great work. They just have different sensibilities. So you got a ton of films coming out from Seoul and Delhi and all these places. Plus the Nigerians, they're going to eventually get a hit. One day they're going to figure it all out, and it's going to be awesome. It's not that hard to make movies as it was. I mean, one of the rumors was, John Adams is here. I'm an hour late. Well, Mr. Adams, I don't know what to tell you. Get here on time, you wacky president. Aurelius, I'm guessing different countries do movie different ways. As it happens with food in different countries, they use the different cultural aspects they have to entertain a different type of audience. That is true. Like, for instance, in a lot of the Indian movies, there is references to religion and politics and a lot of historical references. So a lot of the Indian movies either reference or take place during the colonization of India when the British took over, and a lot of their movies are about beating the British, that kind of thing. I think it's kind of a cathartic historical thing to do in their movies, to put that in. But they also their stunts are wacky and out of control. I mean, their stunts in a lot of these Bollywood productions are crazy, over the top action sequences where physics are, defied. I mean, look at RRR. There's all these crazy scenes. Part CGI, which isn't great. It's okay. Enough so you can sort of, I mean, it's so wacky, you just go, I don't care. They're trying very earnestly to entertain you. And when a movie does that and at least succeeds on some level, you appreciate it. Or even if they don't totally succeed, you go, well, that's all right. You tried. You feel like you're getting your money's worth when somebody's trying, right? So yeah, they definitely, and it's just interesting for me to see movies shot in other cultures, because you gain glimpses into those other cultures and how things work. So, for instance, the Indians have a police force, but it's also their military, which is different. So, like in the United States, we have a very big separation between the military and the police. But in other countries, they're the same thing. Italy, they're the exact same thing. The cops come, it's the same thing as the military coming to your house. That's basically illegal in the United States. We don't do that. But in other countries, it's different. So For instance, I saw Juan of the Dead, which is a Cuban zombie movie, which I recommend. And you get to see life in Cuba. You get glimpses of it, while they're fighting zombies. So there's a scene where they're waiting for a bus, and it's very funny. But the context is everybody in Cuba is waiting for a bus because it's communist country and everything's public works, but nothing works. The buses are always late, and they're never on time, and the zombies come and they have to run. Aurelius, I hope in 30 years Nigerian cinema evolves to the point where we get Nigerian Hitchcock movies shot there. Same with other countries. I think you will. I mean, I don't think there'll be Hitchcock movies, but I think there'll be, their own version. I mean, what we're getting now out of India, we're getting really big movies out of India. They're getting bigger and bigger. They're becoming more spectacular. The Indians were always very big on being very showy in their movies, even though they didn't have the budgets. That's why they ended with a song and a dance, I think. So, like, a lot of their movies ends with the cast singing and dancing. Not in character, or kind of in character, but not really. It's weird. It's like going to see a play, right? Or a musical, and then at the end, there's a big number at the end. Except you just watched a movie, and then they come out and sing. They're very big on music in the Indian movies, so. I'm trying to think if I've seen one without that yet. I'm sure they exist, but Nigeria doesn't do that stuff. Nah, they're not. They're just trying to get the damn movie from beginning to end. And then you got, the Japanese and the Koreans don't do that. So the Koreans are very soap opera-y. So that's a big thing in Korea. The Korean soap operas are very big. So they have a lot of melodrama in their movies, even in movies where melodrama isn't necessarily necessary. The Japanese, I think, I mean, I haven't seen a tremendous amount of Japanese movies that weren't martial arts or Godzilla movies, but, I would say they're like the Japanese culture. They're very pragmatic and punctual, and everybody has their own deal, right? American movies are more brash and crazy and open. So I think the art reflects the culture in a lot of ways. Yeah, so trying to think where else where I'm surprised you don't see a lot of movies come out of South America, because you'd think they just start making movies. They don't have a tremendous amount of money, but again, the technology is there. They've got stuff to show. I mean, they've got jungle, they've got hot girls. I mean, you would think a movie industry would spring up, especially around, dare I say it, criminals, because criminals like the fun movies. They do. They love organized crime loves the fun movies. Although the Yakuza have been known to throw certain directors off of buildings if they don't like their portrayal in Japanese movies. I've heard that. The Canadians don't have a particularly big cinema. They have some movies, but their movie industry is surprisingly small. I would think it would be better because, one of the things me and my friend did, who's Canadian, we tried to put together a movie deal in Canada, because the Canadian government will give you tax credits, a lot of them, if you shoot the movie in Canada and you use Canadian talent. And so the idea behind our film is we were going to shoot a movie for about, I think the final budget was like $5.3 million. And we were going to get at least 50% of the tax credits from the Canadian government, which means the movie really would have been half price in terms of shooting. And we had the we were going to hold on to the distribution rights in Canada, because the highest grossing film at that time, I don't know about now, Canadian grossing film that was actually shot in Canada was a movie called Good Cop, or Good Cop Bond Cop, right? So it's about two cops. It's supposed to be Good Cop Bad Cop, but it's actually also Good Cop Quebec Cop, right? Because that's where the Bond comes from. It's French. So it's about two police officers that have to team up to take down this gang. It's not a bad movie. It's pretty good, but it's the biggest grossing Canadian film at the time. I think it only made $9 million. And we thought, oh, we can make way more than that. And so, we could pitch this movie, get a bunch of Canadian tax credits if we could get funding for it, and make millions of dollars just showing it in Canada, because our idea was to promote it as mostly a Canadian production. And then we were going to sell the rights to the States and then make more money, and that was our plan. It didn't come to fruition, unfortunately, but we went to a guy who runs the Canadian equivalent of the Gap. And we pitched to him an idea that if he funded the movie, the characters in the movie would wear nothing but his clothes. And we would promote that in part of the movie somehow. All right, I got behind. Aurelius, as a South American, I don't understand either. There's lots of criminal movies and some other types, but all SA movies are done, or South American movies are done with national scope, and all countries are rather small in population. Maybe if there was a pan-Hispanic mindset, things would be different. I don't know. Maybe it's just a money thing. I mean, maybe crime's too out of control. They can't guarantee enough safety on the set to make it work. In America, the only South American movies I can think of that they shoot is they either shoot in Mexico, and it's always a cartel movie, or they shoot in the jungles of like Brazil, or pretend to, and it's about somebody finding a magic cure in the Amazon and then leaving. So seems like there would be a lot. I think, did James Bond ever go to Brazil? Didn't he go to Rio de Janeiro one scene? I think he did. Like, yeah, why wouldn't you shoot like a thriller in Rio de Janeiro or something? Sounds like it would be a cool setting for a thriller, And then the big scene would take place, it wouldn't be about the cartel guys. Maybe there'd be some cartel guys in it. I mean, there's stuff to do there. Where you might see some movies shot? Argentina. Yeah, now you got Malay in there. It's turning the whole boat around. Maybe it's because there was too much socialism in South America. I don't know. But maybe Malay will open the doors. Maybe some enterprising people who already live there, Aurelius, will pick up the torch and shoot a movie. If you need a screenwriter, you know how to reach me. I work cheap, but I don't work for free. But anyhow, getting back to Trolls. Trolls band together. I don't know why this movie did well, but it did. Number 15, American Fiction finally opened. I have high hopes for this movie, but it's already in its 4th week? Are you kidding me? How long has this been out? 4 weeks? No way. This is the first time I think I've sort of been out of the loop because I haven't been doing these on the reg, but 2.9 million, that is not a lot, but this movie does look good. I don't think it's super expensive to make, but 2.9 million is not a lot. That's barely going to cover Jeffrey Wright's trailer and salary, I would say, because he's the star, and he probably doesn't come too cheap. It only did $1 million this week, but it's only in 114 theaters. it should get a wider release. This may be Oscar bait as well. Unless, but it does conflict with, as the critical drinker says, the message. So maybe they're trying to squash it. But I want to see it. Even though I don't like Jeffrey Wright's politics, but I think I may warm up to him if he did this movie the way I think it is. Aurelius, that's part of it. It's also that not much gets there. There was a movie telling the story of Venezuelan political prisoners. It was banned in Venezuela, in fact. Well, you know, they just need to do movies that aren't political. You know? Like, you could do a movie about a bank heist, and that's not political, right? Or a movie about, I don't know, aliens. There was a movie about aliens, I forget what it was called, but the premise of the movie was they initially landed in somewhere in South America or Central America, and they weren't like invading aliens. They were just kind of these things that grew, like the meteor hits and then they just start growing out of control, and they grow to these massive sizes. And so the United States builds a giant border wall to keep out aliens, and it's massive because these things are the size of, like in Star Wars, like remember the AT-ATs, the giant robot mech things that Luke Skywalker takes down, and when Star Wars was still good. They're like that size, and they roam around the countryside just crushing things. And then there's this other stuff that comes with it that grows on the side of trees, and they're causing all sorts of environmental problems. It's not a great movie, but it's kind of interesting that it throws out that. That was supposedly set in South America, but again, not enough of it. But it wasn't political, I don't think. It might have had a climate change message buried in there somewhere, but I don't know. I think you could do a thriller, you could do a comedy, certainly, but that's harder. Probably won't get wide distribution of comedy because, you know, comedy doesn't translate as well, right, Joan? Sorry, I just stunk up the room. I'll let you go, little dog. Ugh. Woo. Woo. Too much beef stew. Clint Miller, The Monolith Monsters, 1957. No, this was a more modern movie. But I vaguely remember that one. That was, wasn't that, like the effects were those rocks that grow. If you've ever had those, you can buy these like weird rocks that grow in an aquarium or something. You like pour them in there and they just, I don't know, it's some chemical reaction and they grow and then topple over. That's what the Monolith Monsters, I think, are in 1957. Now, these look like AT-ATs. They look like these giant, monstrous things with no heads, and they just roam around the countryside crushing everything because they're so large and hideous. And then the army comes out and shoots at them, but I don't know, they can't really blow them up. So it's kind of not a great movie. But I do want to see American Fiction. I think it's going to be a good movie. I might catch it on streaming. I don't know. It doesn't look like it's getting a wide release. It's a very art house movie. Number 16 is Wish from Disney. This movie effing tanked. $209 million? That is not going to be money, I'm guessing. Nope. The production budget was $200 million. So they advertised this movie. Oh yeah, they spent some money advertising this, and that money is gone. They ain't getting that back. This is it. This movie's done, diddly done. They ain't gonna sell any toys. $706,000. Yeah, it's done. It's going out of theaters. It's going right to Disney Plus, and who the F cares? That is not money. That is a loss, I would say. All of Us Strangers, gay romance movie, 425,000. Yeah, it's an art house. Napoleon, 299,000. Still in movie theaters. Yep, this is not money. Production budget 200 million. It made about 213 million worldwide. That is not money. They advertise that movie. Oh yeah. The Holdovers, 20 million. Don't know if this is money. I don't think so. I don't think they shot this thing for under 20, but maybe they really cut back. I mean, Paul Giamatti's in it. I like him as an actor. A Zone of Interest. This is more Oscar bait. $635,000. Have they actually released this? I mean, it's in its 4th week. It's in 6 theaters. How are you going to make this movie work? I guess they're just waiting for the Oscars. And then they're going to do a wider release. Memory is another movie. It's $65,000. I mean, it looks depressing. Anselm, what is this? I don't remember this movie. Hasn't cracked $1 million. Needs another $70,000 to crack $1 million. Killers of a Flower Moon, $17,000. If you're dying to see a 3.5 hour movie, $156 million. That is not money. That is a loss. $200 million production budget from Paramount. That is not good, Paramount. Again, $200 million? Martin Scorsese is capable of making a movie for less than that. That is too much money, too long a movie. It's just too much. I don't know what you guys were thinking. Could have made at least 4 movies with that money. And if Martin doesn't want to do a $40 million production, oh well. Give it to a younger guy. I mean, I get it. He's a big name, but what did it do you? Nothing. Names don't mean anything anymore, Hollywood. DiCaprio doesn't really mean anything anymore. If it did, you wouldn't have a problem with this movie. I mean, he could bring in people, but only so many. And Killers of the Flower Moon, was it even about him? When you got Lily Gladstone in the trade magazines every other week, talking about her pronouns and talking about the Osage Indians. I mean, what the hell were you thinking? Oh, right, you're woke and you're virtue signaling. Well, enjoy your lack of profit. Radical, still in the damn theaters. I'm just sick of seeing this movie advertised. I see it in my YouTube feed. It drives me nuts. The Sweet East from Utopia, $8,000 in its 6th week in 2 theaters. Why even report it? The Crime Is Mine in 4 theaters in its 2nd week. I don't know what this is. The Crime Is Mine. Looks like a period piece. Mayhem from IFC Films. $6,803. Ooh, that looks bloody. Looks very bloody. What is this? $98,000 worldwide. A martial artist and ex-con starts a new life in Thailand to escape a local gang lord, but a kidnapped family member sucks him back into the underworld he left behind in this propulsive action spectacle. Well, it sounds like my kind of movie. Might have to check this out. I like the title. Hopefully it'll get a wider release. But I don't know. Apparently the alternative name is Farang. What country made this thing? And Oppenheimer made $4,000. God, they want this to hit $1 billion so bad. $954 million. You're not going to make it. Look, you can re-release it when Oscar time happens and it wins a couple of Oscars. It probably will. it probably will win Best Actor for Cillian Murphy. I assume he will be nominated at least, possibly Best Picture, because I think they're going to give it to Barbie. I know it'll be awful, but it's the Oscars. It's not really about what's a good movie. I think they'll give it to Barbie, so they'll give Nolan the Best Director, and they'll give Best Movie to Barbie. Would be my guess, and then Cillian Murphy will get Best Actor. I don't think they'll give it to Margot Robbie though. Nah, she's too young, and the movie's too nuts. It's not a serious enough of a. If they give it to Margot for this, I mean, you could give it Best Picture because you could argue like, well, it was a phenomenon, and it was. But I don't think you can make a good argument to give her Best Actress. It's not even a good role. I would have given it to her for The Wolf of Wall Street. She's amazing in that. But, Best Actress, I don't know. Who knows? But Cillian Murphy probably could get Best Actor. I think he'll at least be nominated. He's kind of young for it, though. But I think Best Director, Christopher Nolan. And Scorsese will be nominated, and he's old enough to win, but he ain't winning for Killers of a Flower Moon. Ain't no way that movie's gonna win. Unless, like, they just stack the Academy with so many woke idiots, they just pick every woke thing in the book. Or they let them pick, and then they go back and they tweak the votes. So, but maybe they could make another 20 mil when you re-release it for Oscar bait. Like, oh, it won 2 Oscars and was nominated for 6. Come out and see Oppenheimer again. Maybe you can get people to come see it again, but I don't think you're going to make $1 billion, Universal. I mean, it's a good try. Good try. It's not going to help your worldwide box office, but nothing else. I mean, they did just have a strike, so I mean, nothing's coming out. So maybe theaters will be okay with rerunning every friggin' movie that was nominated for an Oscar. I don't know. Oh God, look at what's coming out. Here's the most anticipated movies list. Before we move on, The Beekeeper, that one's with Jason Statham doing. It's basically should be called Jason Statham number 17. It's just Jason Statham killing everybody, except he's a beekeeper this time. Then there's Mean Girls. Mean Girls is another one of these movies, right? It was, I don't know if it was a book, but it was a movie back in the 90s. Then it was a Broadway show. Now it's a movie based on the Broadway show. If you can imagine. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm just like, oh God, you're working hard to make me not see movies. Then there's the Book of Clarence, which is like the critical race theory of the Bible. That's all the only way I could describe it. It looks awful. Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim, who cares? Miller's Girl, which is Jenna Ortega as a college student, kind of trying to seduce, or I think it's up in the air, her teacher, who's played by Martin Freeman. That's probably going to be big and controversial. Colleen Hoover's book has been turned into a movie. It Ends With Us, which I don't know. I don't know if you know Colleen Hoover. I don't really know her, but what I do know is I'm on Twitter for the book communities and the writing communities. And one of the books, and it's mostly women recommending books to each other constantly, mostly young adult books. They're utterly obsessed with it. But one of the series of books they recommend, and they either love it or hate it, are Colleen Hoover's books. And so women either recommend Colleen Hoover or say, if another person recommends Colleen Hoover to me, I'm blocking them. John Adams. Japan has stage performances like Rakugo for their stellar storytelling. So that's another thing. So it's Broadway play, Rakugo, uh, and I don't know, street theater. And what's the other thing? What's the poetry? I was just trying to think of it. Damn it, I can't think. I get all jazzed up on caffeine, and then I can't think. Haiku. That's the word I was trying to think of. That's interesting. Rakugo. Um, but yeah, look at these most anticipated movies. It's crazy. Arthur the King. That looks wholesome. Origin. That looks awful. Arthur the King is a dog movie with Mark Wahlberg. It's a family movie. Origin is another race movie. This one's by Anna DuVernay, who, in my view, has been Hollywood's continual diversity hire. Every project they give Ava DuVernay seems to just fail, and then they just give her another project, and it's unbelievable. And they every time they tout it as if she's the coming of Christ in cinema, and then nothing happens. Nobody watches it, and it just goes away. And then they give her another project. How many more projects are you going to throw at this woman? I don't think she knows what she's doing. I think she likes I think she likes the process of it all. I'm sure she loves that. I'm sure she likes, the process of going to. A lot of people just love the process. A lot of people want to be writers, but they don't want to actually write. But they would love to sit in a bookstore and sign books and talk to people. They love that part of it. But they hate actually writing. They want to, be interviewed. They love that. But they don't actually want to make a book. I feel like Anna DuVernay is the filmmaker equivalent of that. I don't think she actually wants to make movies. I think she wants to do everything else that, So somebody should just ghost make a movie for her and let her take credit, and then she could actually be interviewed. Argyle, that movie might be good. That's a Mark Millar movie. It looks cool. Sam Rockwell is in it. Henry Cavill. It looks fun. And Dune Part 2, which also does look good. So, 2 out of 2, maybe 2.5 out of 10 movies. Most anticipated. How is the Book of Clarence most anticipated? I don't think that's true. That's Hollywood. John Adams. The Dark Knight movie had politics with the opening bank heist, but it was Gotham politics. Yeah, that doesn't really count. It doesn't really count because it's made up politics. Golden Globes pre-show, everybody. Oh, I know you like that. Are you psyched for the Golden Globes pre-show? Oh boy, we get to see a bunch of rich people in their clothes? Wow. So the Golden Globes had a swag bag, and this is part of the way to get celebrities to come to these things. The swag bag this year was worth over $500,000. One of the things in the bag, and I don't know if it was an actual bag, but one of the things in it is the world's most expensive bottle of wine. The bottle of wine by itself was over $193,000. And then some of the things in the swag bag included a $20,000 trip to somewhere somewhere down south in the tropics, a $10,000 credit for a private jet service, things worth tens of thousands of dollars. And then the cheap stuff, quote unquote, was like $500 caviar and clothes and $1,500 sneakers. It's nuts. Absolutely insane swag bag this year. But I could see why they did it, to get the celebrities to come in. And it's not really worth that much, because when you think about it, right? Let's say you're the wine company and you proffer yourself as the most expensive wine in the world, right? and you decide you're going to give away bottles of wine for this thing, as part of your, advertising. It's not bad strategy because the people you're giving it away from can actually afford bottles of wine that cost almost $200,000. But, that's a lot of money to spend, but you're not really spending $200,000 on that bottle of wine. You're just spending whatever it costs to make the wine. Why it costs that much money probably has nothing to do with the actual production cost of the wine. I mean, wine isn't that expensive to make. I would guess, if it costs more than a couple of $100 to make those bottles of wine, probably costs more for the packaging than anything else. So, they're saying it's worth that much, but it's not really. Same thing with free private jet hours, like $10,000 voucher for private jet hours. What they're assuming is anybody who's at the level of celebrities who are using that for private jet, they're going to use that and more, right? Because they use private jets on a semi-regular basis. Yeah, one of them might say, well, I don't really have this much money to blow on private jets, but I have this free ticket, so me and my family are going to go, I don't know, to Texas for the weekend. We'll use the private jet, and then we'll use the other half of it to go home, and then that'll be it. But for a few of them, they'll make enough money on the back end. Or they'll just sell it. That's what I would do. Aurelius, I saw somewhere once that wine quality really doesn't go much higher after $20. Expensive wine is just luxury spending. Yep. My dad makes wine, and I help him. And, there are a few things you can do to jazz it up a little bit, but it's just fermenting grape juice. So, you either do it right, based on the juice and the yeast and whatever else you put in it, or you F it up. My dad's been doing it so long, he's got it down to a science. I'm just there to help him. We rack the wine. And when you rack the wine, what you do is you drain, in this case, my father has demijohns that are about five or 6 gallons, depending. And we drain them into a demijohn on the floor about halfway. And then, we take the clean, we drain it because we're getting rid of the sediment that settles in the demijohns. As it's fermenting, everything settles, and then you basically drain it and strain it, and it makes it a little clear and nicer. And you do that process a couple of times, and then eventually you put it in bottles, or you have to you can do things like you can use argon. It's an inert gas, and to keep it from to keep the air out of it, to keep it from continuing to ferment out of control or whatever. But you can make some good stuff on your own. And and the worst part is you could spend $200,000 on a bottle of wine and you might not like it. You might go, this isn't very good. I think that would be the likely scenario, because you spend so much money, you're expecting it to be like, oh my God, my mouth is dancing. And then when that doesn't happen, you'll be like, this is it? So it's too much money. I wouldn't spend that money. I don't have that money. But yeah, I don't know why anybody would watch the Golden Globes. I mean, unless Ricky Gervais came back to trash everybody, then I'd watch it. Oh boy, would I watch it. But to get the Hollywood celebrities, that $500,000 swag bag, that might get them through the door. That might get a few of them. That would get me. I'd be like, $500,000 swag bag, because you could sell it off. You could make, I would imagine you could make at least $50K off the bottle of wine alone. I would put that thing right up on eBay. Who wants this $100,000 $200,000 bottle of wine for $50K. Goodbye. I don't want it. All the freebie passes. Sure, I'd sell them at half price. I'd sell it all. I'd get all the cash. Except maybe the caviar. That I'd eat. I like caviar. I like fishy things. What else was there? Sneakers. I might keep them. I'd try them on. If they fit nice, I'd be like, all right. But, it depends. You might need to keep that stuff because of your lifestyle. In Hollywood, you got to maintain a lifestyle if you're an A-lister or whatever, with some exceptions. But, like, Chris Pratt doesn't seem to do that. But you still got to, look expensive at the very least. Let's see. The Last of Us grabs 8 wins on night 1 of the Creative Arts Emmy. There's another friggin' art award. Who cares? How many award show you gonna do, Hollywood? Let's see. So here's Joe Coy. Now he's a stand-up comic. He recently did a movie. It looked funny. He's not bad, but he's hosting the Golden Globes. I don't think there's any way he's going to be able to pull in very many viewers, unfortunately. I mean, I understand why he's doing it. He's not that famous. It's a step up for him, but there's not much he can do other than try to host it and try not to embarrass anybody, I guess, or the opposite, say something so outrageous if it makes the rounds on YouTube and gets him some press. But it can't be, if it's going to be woke, I don't think it'll do him any good, but who knows? He doesn't seem like the kind of guy to do that, but you never know. His people might be saying, you got to say something crazy. Say something crazy and woke. Hannah Waddingham flew onto the Mission Impossible 8 set, where Tom Cruise and 4,500 active military members were waiting for her. It was insane. Yeah, it is insane that 4,500 members of our military are wasting their time shooting a Tom Cruise movie when they should be defending the country. Yeah, that is insane. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing what my tax dollars were wasted on this week. I can't talk about that. That's a sponsored ad anyway. All right, that's about it there. All right, moving on to ads. Fandom Pulse. I like this new site. This is the John Delaraz website. Kind of like he was writing for Bounding in the Comics, I think, and moved over to here. It's a little more based than Bounding. So this is my new favorite site. It's been doing pretty good. Jodie Foster gives an interview on ageism and aging out of roles in Hollywood, calls Gen Z really annoying. So she sounds like an old lady, and she kind of is an old lady. But, she didn't do all that many movies, She was very picky on the kind of movies she would do. I think she should have done more, but she didn't want to do them, and I guess she's making okay money, so I don't think she cares. Cardboard cutouts. Postmodern DC Comics and Marvel faceplant next to Star Wars and Star Trek. And don't forget Doctor Who. Yeah, that's all done. I don't know why anybody would be interested in any of this stuff. John Adams, speaking of Gervais, watch his new special yet? Or Chappelle's? Not yet. Not yet. I started watching Reacher, and I was burning through the episodes, and then it ends at 6, and they haven't released the rest yet. So now I'm in the middle of the story, and I gotta wait. So I may very well watch one or both of them soon. Reacher is okay this year. It's not as good as the first season, but it's still pretty good. I mean, Alan Ritchson killing dudes is pretty good, but the screenwriting this time isn't great. It's a little off, and I'm not sure why. Forbes had an article on it, and they trashed it. I don't know. I'm biased. I like the show, so I want to see it pull out of the dive in the next, I don't know, I guess it's got 4 more episodes. So as long as the ending's okay, I'll be mostly all right with it. But, you know, it's been okay, the dialogue. The action sequences, they're okay too. There's been some dumb stuff that I don't quite understand why they did it. I don't know. The first season was better, but it's a different story, so that's part of the issue too. But yeah, it's definitely on my list to see Gervais and Chappelle. Also, I still got to see Jennifer Lawrence naked in No Hard Feelings. I hope that's still on Netflix. Oh no, Nelson Peltz blocked from the Disney Board of Directors? Question mark? Huh, I hope not. He seemed like a hope to turn Disney around, but I'd rather see Disney crash and burn. I hope he pulls out all his money and the stock collapses. Lionsgate and Hasbro reach $500 million media deal while both companies lay off 30% of their workforces to begin the year. So, I mean, this is the times. Companies are going to lay off lots of people. Welcome to the 70s. Welcome to the 70s where everything's falling apart, everything sucks, and everybody's broke. Okay? That's the way it was. Everybody was broke. And, you know, grew up in the 80s, you know, and things got better and better, and we didn't appreciate it. But we thought there was nowhere to go but up. Now we're faced with all these Gen Zers and wackadoos who they don't even know what suffering is. They're gonna know. They're gonna know if the economy collapses. Let's see. Charlize Theron calls parents who oppose exposing children to drag shows driven by fear and ignorance during RuPaul's Drag Race. No, they are not. It's very simple, Charlize. This is why you're still single, by the way, you weirdo. Drag shows are a form of burlesque. Burlesque is a form of stripping. Stripping is for adults only. I hope that made things clear. It's not for little kids. It's supposed to be bawdy and adult. You're not supposed to expose children to bawdiness. Purposely, anyway. Sometimes, you know, kids, they're going to push the envelope. I certainly did when I was a kid. I would try to read magazines I probably wasn't allowed to read. I read Heavy Metal magazine when I was like 13. You know, my parents didn't want me to read that stuff. It had boobs in it. But Charlene's, she don't know. John Adams, the 80s at least had Depeche Mode. I didn't like Depeche Mode. I know it's controversial. Who did I like in the 80s in that realm? Wall of Voodoo and Stan Ridgway. I liked them. I was on a college radio station, but I was a classic rock guy. I was actually on 2 stations. The AM station was classic rock, and the FM station was the college radio station. So I liked Wall of Voodoo. I didn't like Depeche Mode. Tom Petty was still in rotation at the college radio station. I liked him. The Cars was still on the college radio station. I liked them. What else? Handful of others. But mostly I was a classic rock guy. So when I was in high school, I proclaimed that no good music had been recorded after 1974 because I was only listening to, you know, Beatles, Who, Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix. You know, it was all about the classic rock. Led Zeppelin to some extent. So that was my music snob days. It wasn't until the 90s I sort of broke out of that. But different times. But yeah, I mean, Charlize Theron, what the hell's wrong with you? I mean, I guess at least you're not transing your kids like Megan Fox is. My God, Megan Fox. I think she's out of her mind. Like, I think she has 2 or 3 sons, and they're both transitioning. They're both wearing girls' clothes. Like, oh, what the hell are you doing? That's not good. It's not good when they grow up and they're all screwed up. That is not going to be good. You know, I'm not. Look, I don't have anything against trans people, but you have to understand, trans people are incredibly rare. Like 0.001% of the population. It's very rare. Very rare. But there are too many people that are pushing this on people, I think. I better not talk about this anymore. It's YouTube. John Adams, Iron Maiden barely misses the cutoff then. I like that one song that's in the Vice City soundtrack. What is it? 2 minutes to midnight. That one? That's fun. I like that. That's early 80s. That's my time period too. But yeah, in high school I was pretty incorrigible on that score. But I didn't get a lot of music where I mean I was in South Jersey. We got all the trends late. I didn't really understand the punk trend until much later. Like I didn't get into punk until like I don't know, late 80s, I guess. And then I was like, oh, there's all this cool punk stuff going on. I missed it. Carter Chain. Hollywood screwed up Megan Fox. Thus, the cycle continues. Yeah. Yeah. She's so hot, though. Charlize is pretty hot when she wants to be. Weird that she's talking about drag shows. But then again, she's on RuPaul's Drag Race, so... It just might be chatter that she's trying to look cool on the show and be supportive of RuPaul or something, and feels like she has to say that while she's on the show, and then she'll leave the show, and then who cares, right? Oh, this was a big story this week. More of Doctor Who's fall continues. Nakuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson hint their controversial Doctor Who is already canceled after second season. So the rumor is there's not going to be any more of this horrible show after 2025. Well, to which I say good. I mean, just stop watching it, everybody. What they did to Doctor Who is brutal. I mean, for all the things they did to Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel Comics, DC Comics, I don't even think it compares to the level of cringe of Doctor Who with Nakuti Gatwa. My God. It's just embarrassing. They've turned the show from a charming sci-fi show that had to use clever things because they didn't have much of a budget to make a cool story to a show that's ridiculously overproduced, that is now full of musical numbers and the gayest thing I've ever seen. I mean, it's just one gay scene after the next on this show. And I only watch the clips. I'm not watching this thing. I'm just watching the clips. It's just gay, 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 gay. And the dumbest thing about this is they decided instead of making Nakuti Gatwa, they didn't even commit to their own bit. Committing to their own bit would have been like, Nakuti Gatwa is the new Doctor. So F you. No. Instead, they decided to make 2 Doctors, and he basically splits in half, which was stupid enough. But you might be able to sell it in a sci-fi realm. You might say, well, it's a sci-fi show. But then there's a scene where Nakuti Gatwa picks up a large hammer and smacks the side of the TARDIS, and another TARDIS pops out of it. So now there's 2 TARDISes. So David Tennant can go off and retire and be henpecked the rest of his life by woke women, I guess, while Nakuti goes off to his gay adventures. You know, it's just like gay, gay, gay. And not only is he gay, he's not the Doctor. If like he was just black and gay, but he was the biggest nerd on the planet, you'd be like, okay, that's kind of the Doctor. No, he's a fashion plate. He wears the most fashionable clothes. It's like completely against the grain of the Doctor. Everything about it. Look, Russell T Davies, again, this stuff gets ruined earlier on, but you kind of don't see it or you kind of forgive it. It's just like the shills. John Adams, a wheelchair accessible one, no less. Yeah. What's the name? There's a bunch of shills today. I think it started in the last 24 hours that are shilling for Star Wars hard all of a sudden. I don't know why, but they're popping up in my feed left and right, and they are saying the most ridiculous things about the least liked characters in Star Wars. Like an all-female. They're just going all in like, oh no, Star Wars is wonderful. When I saw the lightsaber battle between these two female Jedis, I was like, oh my God, well, Rey is the greatest. Like, no lie, that's been the last 24 hours on Twitter. It's nuts. It just can't, it's obviously shillbots or bots or something. There's something going on. Like, nothing came out. Why are these people suddenly shilling Star Wars like their life depended upon it? It's bizarre. Anyhow, they are shilling it hard. And, you know, the thing most people don't get is Carter Jane. I hate when shows and movies break the rules of their own universe and explain it away as just sci-fi. Yeah, that's a real problem. Some of it can be explained in sci-fi, but yeah. Not that hammer. That hammer's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So George Lucas, I think, is the guy who really ruined Star Wars. He started ruining it in 1983 when he made the Return of the Jedi. But at that point, we forgave him, even though he seemed to betray his own vision. Initially, the vision wasn't Ewoks. It was Wookiees. The third movie was going to take place on the Wookiee home planet. That's where it should have taken place. That would have made more sense to the trilogy. And then you could close out all the characters, including Chewbacca the Wookiee. Then when Wookiees show up later, it's like, oh yeah, there are Wookiees too. Instead, and this is back in 1983, the nerds were discussing it. We were discussing it. Did Lucas betray his own vision with Ewoks, Wookiee spelled backwards, basically, or an anagram of Wookiee, I guess, because he wanted to, sell some more toys or whatever. Aurelius, most likely PR firms. Yeah, probably. They're annoying as F, though. And they're actually damaging the brand further, I think, because people are annoyed by them. Like, go F yourself. But Lucas is the one, I think, who started to betray his own vision. And then with the Phantom Menace, Metachlorians cinched it. Adding Metachlorians, I think, ruined Star Wars. That was at the heart of Star Wars. That ruined it. And then everything after that was a zombie movie walking, dead franchise walking. But some people like the prequels. There's no denying that. I don't think they're any good. I didn't see anything after Phantom Menace. I wasn't interested in Star Wars. After seeing Phantom Menace, I walked out of the theater and I went, done. And my friends looked at me like I was nuts. They were like, you're done? I'm like, yep. I'll never see another Star Wars movie again. And I haven't. I haven't seen the 2 prequel movies. After that, I have no interest in them. I don't care what's in them. He ruined midichlorians. There are only 3 Star Wars movies. So now you get the current crop. I mean, these people are so far removed from Star Wars. And there's a quote going around from George, something about like, well, I got so much grief from the Phantom Menace. I didn't want to do any more Star Wars movies. Okay, don't do them. What do I care? I don't want you to do horrible ones. I want you to do good ones. Those were not good, which indicates to me Lucas needed help. He had help, definitely on not Return of the Jedi, The Empire Strikes Back. He definitely had help on that one. Lawrence Kasdan. So maybe he's not the great creative you think he is. Maybe there's somebody behind the scenes that inputted more enough that it made him great. And he, at the time, was willing to take that, but then he gets, a little full of himself and goes off in a weird direction in the prequels, and there you have it. Maybe. John Adams, midget Wookiees. Maybe it was a preschool moon. Aurelius, well, now that we are way beyond Lucas's vision, I might just one day remake the OT in animated form and just rewrite stuff like that. I say do something original, Aurelius. Don't bother to save this zombie IP. Don't waste your talent on that. Do something original. If you do something great, people will acknowledge it eventually. You might be dead by the time they do. But if something's good, people like it. And they know it. Don't waste your time. I tell people all the time, don't do fan fiction. Do not do fan films, with some exceptions, maybe for the fan films. If you really know what you're doing and you're going to do one and you're going to impress some executive because you're trying to get a gig or whatever. But even that, you can just do your own version of Star Wars. What I mean by that is not to do Star Wars, but you just do a space movie. Just do a space movie. Look, the elements in Star Wars, like they've been in a million different things. Guys with guns, guys with space swords. It's been done a million times. You can still do that stuff. You can't call it a Jedi. You can't call it, you can't use those words. You got to change up the look, but that's easy enough to do if you're creative. Don't waste your money and time and effort and talent trying to do a Star Wars thing. Unless it's like a one-shot thing you're doing for attention, maybe. But I say don't do it. I say do something original, because then it might hit. You never know. We need original thoughts. John Adams, episode 2 was my favorite. So much political intrigue. Yeah, everybody likes that one. John Adams. The Empire Strikes Back is considered the best one. I think most nerds would back me up on that. The order is Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, the first one, and then Return of the Jedi. Some people put Rogue One in there, but I haven't seen it. I don't care about Rogue One. Aurelius, I do love the idea of space feudalism. Yeah, you could take that to another. Look, originally Lucas was more of like space western. I think Luke was supposed to be a general, and he changed it up. Just change it up. Change it up. Do something cool. If you're going to do space feudalism, do it. Take it to its nth degree. Have peasants, have titles, and, the kind of stuff they had in feudalism times. In the Middle Ages. Make it like push it. Push it off the effing cliff. People like that stuff. If the premise is space feudalism, take that to its logical conclusion. John Adams, no LOL, not episode 5. Oh, episode 2. So you're saying the one after Phantom Menace? I didn't say it. No, thank you. Clint Miller, I liked your interview in All Things South Jersey. Thank you, Clint, for watching that. I admire your ability to weave South Jersey history, mafia, even though they don't exist, exactly, and legends into entertaining stories, original stories. Thank you, Clint. I try. Yeah, it's totally, the Pineys has got its totally different thing. People could say, oh, you borrowed from this or that. I mean, people always say that, and certainly they say that about Star Wars and other stuff, although he did borrow a lot. But, it's also its own thing. That's just the way it rolls. I mean, we all speak English. We've all seen a bunch of stuff. You gotta, it's kind of inevitable that some of that's just going to seep into your stuff. But, these companies, as much as they would love to do it, they don't own the English language, and they don't own every variation on a lightsaber or a space gun or a space this or a space that. Do your own thing. I've got a pitch for my own space thing, I totally want to do it, but not ready. Not ready to do that yet. And if I never get to do that, oh well. I mean, I've done a few on the Webcomic Factory. We did, me and Christian wrote Intergalactic Medical Doctor. So that's up. You can read that whole story. That one came out pretty good. Basically, it's about a doctor in space. So all the stories revolve around the medical end, not the space part, the medical stuff. There's some spacey stuff around it, but all the problems are solved through medical stuff. And then there's another story about a guy who runs a bar on a space station. It's kind of like Cheers meets, the Katina from Star Wars. So we never leave the bar. It's always on the space station and in the bar. And so, like, there's, like, one of his characters is an alien who just drinks all the time. And he just doesn't really understand things about humans. So he's always making weird comments. There's another character. She's basically like an android prostitute, but she has, because she can, like, change out her parts and basically have sex with anybody. Trying to remember all the characters. There was a bunch of alien characters and a bunch of alien stuff, so it was fun. And then the main character, the guy who owned the bar, was a human, and he was like one of the few humans on the space station. And so the aliens were constantly giving him, like, advice, but they don't understand humans, so their advice didn't quite make sense to him. So, like, they would try to give him advice on love, but, like, they didn't understand human anatomy and things like that. Don the Second is here. Hey, Don. He says, hey, Tony. So it's very possible. Like, yeah, you can do your own version of space stuff. They do any more space stuff? Oh, yeah, I did. One of the early comics we did on the Webcomic Factory is called The Horror of Colony 6. So that's like zombies in space. That was the pitch for that. It's a zombie story, but like a space colony story. So that was really kicking up, but we lost the artist and haven't gotten back to it since. It's a real high bar. I really need a good artist to finish that one. One day, maybe one day. Or maybe I'll just sell the TV rights, because, man, that would make a good TV show. Or I'll just write something else. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you're creative, you just write something else. I've got, at one point my friend was working at Disney, and I was just trying to come up with pitches in case I could pitch to Disney. I've got like 100 different pitches for Disney, that all kinds of stuff. All TV shows, movies, comics, all this stuff. It's just sitting in my computer. One day I may go back to it. I wrote a bunch of pitches for when I was working for this fantasy company, for comics. Pitched a bunch of fantasy comic ideas. I mean, a bunch of them were cool. I've got literally dozens of pitches for stuff. You can just keep making this stuff up. I had a pitch. My friend who used to draw Batman, he wanted to do a post-apocalyptic, like heavy metal type comic. I had a pitch for that. That was going to be fun. So you can just make it up. Make up stuff. It's better to make up stuff because you can go in crazy new directions. Speaking of crazy stuff, DC Comics lowers the bar with black lesbians and transgender gorilla in nonsensical Fire and Ice. Welcome to Smallville. This is some of the worst comics I've ever seen. Rosario Dawson and Ahsoka. Who cares? John Adams, did you previously talk about Eric July funding some independent comics for Christmas already? I don't think so. I did talk about Eric the other day. He funded some indie comics. Oh, right. He funded that guy's... I think he just threw money at some of the guys in Kickstarter or whatever, right? Didn't he? I mean, that's a good idea. Good for him. if he thinks they're good. I don't think that's the answer to solving the problems of the comic book industry, but I think it's a positive step. John Adams, I really want to get into Batman, but they don't make it easy. I wouldn't waste your time on current Batman. A friend of mine who's a Batman fanatic told me that you can go online, I think on eBay, but I also think you could do it at DC Comics. I think he bought his through DC, but I think you can also buy them on eBay. You can buy the PDFs of 500 Batman comics for $50. That's a good deal. That's a lot of reading too. So you'll go through many years of Batman, and that's like literally 1 to 500. So that'll get you into it, but after a while, it's going to all sound the same. I mean, the best eras for Batman are going to be Neil Adams. That's one of the best eras, when he's like a detective, martial artist, and superhero all combined. You know, it's like, it's before Batman got all serious. It was still a little campy, but not too campy. They were getting out of the camp, you know, because they were trying to get away from the Adam West TV show. Before that, it's very campy, and then further back you go, it gets very, very old school. Razor Fist, Razor Fist was posting panels from very old Batman comics when Batman was shooting dudes. When Batman would pick up a gun and shoot a guy. Another scene where he's in a plane shooting a machine gun. So, you know, you can see it develop over a period of time. And then it kind of peaks probably around The Dark Knight Returns. I mean, there's a few good stories after that. I don't know. After that, I wouldn't, you know, after The Dark Knight Returns, I think you're basically done with Batman. It kind of peaks there. Frank Miller doing The Dark Knight Returns. Even his sequels, I hear, aren't that great, but like the problem with Batman, there's not one vision in the Batmans you'll read. If you get that 500 issue PDF, I mean, the early stuff will have one tone, and then as you get into, you know, the 40s, it'll have a slightly different tone. Then you'll hit the 50s, and then it'll be really different. Then you hit the 60s, and then it'll get all campy. Then you hit the 70s, and then it starts to get serious again. Then you get the 80s, and then it's super serious. It gets really serious. Then you hit the 90s, and then it's like dark and serious. And then the 2000s roll in, and, you know, you get some good stuff. And by the 2010s, it starts to unravel. And then by now, forget it. So, it's a little too much to read. Like, if you were going to read, say, the Fantastic Four, I would recommend you read the Kirby Fantastic Fours. They're amazing. They hold up even today. They're incredible. I don't say that lightly, but Kirby was a genius. He really was. He could write a comic, and you could pick up just about any Kirby comic and realize this. When Kirby would write a monthly book, you would read it and it would be, the pacing would keep you flipping those pages, and then you'd get to the last page and go, oh, what happens? He's really, really good. John Adams, yes, July funded a couple of Indigo campaigns. Ultra gritty Batman was what I was looking for, closer to Rorschach from The Watchmen. He never goes quite that far, but I really liked his fight with KG Beast. That's a really good one. The Chuck Dixon days were really good, I thought. I thought Chuck Dixon did a pretty good job of making Batman pretty gritty. Not too gritty, but gritty. I think some of the best Batman comics are the ones based after the animated series, because they don't get bogged down in the baggage of Batman. So if you're reading from the beginning, you're going to be, on the one hand, it's good because you'll experience the baggage firsthand. So you'll see why there's a giant penny in the Batcave, because that's from a story from 1939. And then you'll get to see all the other trophies and how they got into the Batcave and why they suddenly started putting them in there. You know, he was not like Rorschach in the beginning. He was more like the Shadow, which Razor Fist talks about, that he was basically a ripoff of the Shadow. Which is not totally untrue, I think. I think it also, I mean, I think it was very derivative of the Shadow. But the Shadow was more, I don't know, the Shadow was cooler somehow. The Shadow was different. He had his own thing going. But just like everything else, I mean, these IPs, they outlive their expiration date, and then these companies keep them going, and then they suck. So, but Batman survived. I mean, it had one of the longest runs before it really started to suck, before they started having him, you know, show dong in the comics just to get a sale. But I mean, this DC Comics doing lesbian and transgender gorilla in a comic called Welcome to Smallville. Smallville is Superman's hometown, in case you don't know, and Fire and Ice don't belong there at all. But for some reason, they've sent them there to do this ridiculous comic. And let me tell you, and here's your black lesbians, and here's Fire lecturing them for some reason. See, look at this. No, you didn't. Black lesbians, I'm here to tell you. It's so weird. And then later, a transgender gorilla, yes, you heard me say that right, a transgender gorilla robs this guy. It's supposed to be a store, even though there's like literally nothing in the store. And then because he doesn't use her proper pronouns, like, the robbery ends suddenly, so Fire can show up to lecture him about pronoun usage. I mean, it is as cringe as it comes. So enjoy that if you want to just see how poorly DC Comics is doing these days. I say the only punishment is not to read them at all. Don't read DC Comics. I would say don't read any Batman. Don't bother. It's too late to get in. It's over. You know, if you want to read some of the classic stories, then maybe, but I wouldn't bother trying to read all of Batman. There's too much crap in the run. You know, and again, it's not the vision. It's not a particular vision of any one guy. He was more of a, you know, group project Batman. He had some good years, but he wasn't it wasn't a vision of a character. It just was something that, it was a cool logo. People liked the logo, and it worked out. Don the Second. This is insanity. Who's buying these comics? No one. No one is buying them. And that's part of the problem. You know, the woke people aren't buying these. They're defending them online, but they're not buying them because they don't buy anything. Because they don't, the importance is not to buy anything. See, if you're woke, your number one priority is to score virtue points, invisible virtue points on social media. You don't need to buy a comic one to do that. You just need to lecture people endlessly or talk about how great DC Comics is doing, Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever woke crap comes down the pike. You champion it, you get your points. Your invisible internet points. You don't have to buy any of this. You don't even have to watch it. Most of these people don't watch this stuff because it's terrible. They don't want to waste their time any more than you do. But they'll defend it because they feel like, well, I have to defend it because there's a bunch of bigots and I'm the only one that can stop them. It's about them. It's narcissism is what it is. They're such narcissists. They will defend this stuff because they feel they've been chosen by God to defend the gays and lesbians and the rainbow community and everybody else. That's the way the woke think. They have to defend those people because no one else will. And there's too many chuds. That's what we are. We're the chuds. Don the second, I'm just wondering how these corporations keep their lights on. Oh, they don't make any money from the comics anymore. They haven't made real money from the comics in a long time. The word is they make it off of merchandising and the movies, and they just don't make. Look, the comics aren't selling, and they're non-returnable, so they know exactly how much money they're losing, which is why they keep cutting back. They've cut back on talent fees and stuff like that. It's just a lost leader. They're owned by companies that are so large. It doesn't matter if the comic division makes money. Even if it made money, it wouldn't make that much. Comics. I mean, I could turn it into $1 billion business, but they would never give me control of it because they would consider me crazy. I would fire all these woke people. I would put good artists and writers in, and we'd do a bunch of base stuff, and people would love it, and they would go, "Oh my God!" Really, the comics are a cheap way to get ESG, I believe, because they're high profile, but they don't cost a lot of money. Like, you'll blow more money publishing a book that doesn't sell than you will a comic. Comics are relatively cheap. I mean, it probably costs them somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $8,000 an issue, and that's about it. So if they can sell 10,000 copies, they break even. They sell advertising in the books too, still to this day, and so they're probably breaking even. Probably not losing money, but if you have a Superman t-shirt, I mean, those things sell like hotcakes. All day long they sell Superman t-shirts. People still buy them. Even the people who hate Superman still buy Superman t-shirts. So Don the second, that is true, because if you really like a property, you'll support it. Woke people do it for virtue points. I'm sure it'll work itself out soon, or else the entertainment industry will collapse. Yeah, I think we're headed towards that. And when Warner Brothers is sick of doing this, they'll just close DC. When they don't need the comic division anymore, they'll either close it and license the characters out, so it'll be somebody else's headache and they'll be guaranteed to make money, or they'll just close the division and put all the stuff on the shelf and say, well, comics don't sell anymore, who cares? JC, nice Adam Hughes cover on the garbage art inside the book. Is that Adam Hughes? That's him? Really? Doesn't look like him. I've seen him do better. John Adams, hearing the state of Western comics makes me sad. End of an era type thing. Well, look, in the 90s, they weren't great. They were not great. Look, I was doing my TV show in the 90s called The Comic Book Show, and we were looking at comics, and they were making money hand over fist, and they were not putting out quality, in my view. I mean, that's when Superman died, and all these things were happening. They were not quality stories. Superman dying was a story they compromised from the get-go, because the original pitch was, and they announced it, that Doomsday was an intergalactic mental patient. And then DC Comics got bombarded, or I don't know what you would call it. They got pressured by a mental health advocacy group to change it. So they changed it. So instead of being an intergalactic mental patient, I don't know, they changed it to some sort of organism that grew out of nothing and became an evil monster that could beat Superman to death in the street. An intergalactic mental patient sounded like a better idea. Quite frankly, I think they should have went with the first one, but so already, yeah, and it became such a hit, such a monster hit. I'll tell you what a big hit The Death of Superman was. I worked for a guy after The Death of Superman at a comic book store. I was one of the managers. He owned it. He told me that when The Death of Superman was happening, they were making so much money at the store. He said one night I couldn't fit all the money in the deposit bag for the bank. So I took a garbage bag out of a waste paper basket, and I filled the garbage bag with money and took it to the bank. He said we made about, I think he said he made like $19,000 one day in the store, which is an insane amount of money for comics. I mean, people were just flooding his store and buying them. It was crazy. I worked at his store after the death of Superman when things were collapsing. It was a different time. Don the Second. Wow, merchandise is where the money is. It absolutely is. When Star Wars came out, they didn't know that, and the toys were making millions, and the movie company didn't care at the time. Later, they were like, "Oh crap! How did we let this go?" And now, of course, they're in on it. That's like half the calculation now. But back then, no, they didn't know. They didn't know initially, and then they had this big hit on their hands. And yeah, it's all about the merchandising, and that makes real money. In fact, that happens with indie comics. I know a guy. He had a web comic. I think he still does it, called Sluggy Freelance. His name is Pete Abrams, a really nice guy. Hi, Pete, if you're listening. He did plushies. He told me one time, I said, Pete, how are you making money on this webcomic thing? I don't understand. He said, well, I do reprints and stuff in my comic, but one week I didn't have anything going, and I was trying to think how to make money, and I decided to do plushies. He made like a ridiculous amount of money on plushies. So yeah, doing that. If you have an IP that's worth some money, if you have a character that people like, I mean, look, Ethan Van Sciver does Cyberfrog action figures. People are buying them. They're selling like hotcakes, as far as I could tell. I mean, it's from his Twitter feed. I'm sure he's tooting his own horn, but still. JC, it might be a different guy. Sorry, I lost the thread of that response. Don the Second. So they were caving to pressure from social justice in the 90s. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were doing that stuff in the 70s. In the 70s, they were doing it. You look at the stories from the 70s. What are they about? It's about social justice and, racism and, feminism and stuff like that. It's just that back then, the guys who were the money guys would tolerate that because there was money in it. And they would say, all right, kid, you want to do some feminist thing? We'll let you do it. We'll see how much it sells. So if it sold, then you were golden. Okay, it sold. Do another one. They were about their money. They weren't ideologues. Now the ideologues control the money. That's the problem. You have ideologues who will say, well, we just did this feminist thing and it didn't sell. Those ideologues will say, do it again. But back then, they would try things. And some of those things were woke and progressive. Some of them weren't. A lot of them weren't. That was the standard. And then once in a while, you do the critically acclaimed comic story, and then you get Neil Adams doing a story about drug addiction, and it was super popular, and it got touted in the media because they're progressive too, and they're touting the same story, and on and went. Some of those stories were really good because you were still on a merit-based system, so in order to get those things through, you had to be a veteran of the industry who had done good work and had gotten some hits. So you couldn't be a nobody and do that. You had to be somebody and do that. And that was the stories they wanted to do. And hey, they're good stories. Look, Chris Claremont is a progressive guy. I'm sure his politics are pretty far left. Not leftoid left, but left. And he had progressive stories in the X-Men all the damn time. But he was a good writer. And he wouldn't overplay his hand. He still did thrilling stories too. He knew how to do a story about Manhattan being turned into a medieval fortress, and Spider-Man is the only guy who hasn't been turned into a medieval version of himself, and all the X-Men and all the Avengers get turned into medieval guys and don't remember who they were, and there's a giant force field around Manhattan, and this wizard is trying to kill Spider-Man, and then he crucifies him on a giant X, and the X-Men have to save him, and it was this huge story. Wasn't anything woke about it. It was just cool. But these guys, you know, back then they had the chops. Don the Second, garbage bags of money. Yes. John Adams, geez, yeah, I agree with Don on the social justice thing. Clint Miller, yogurt did. It's the merchandising. Don the Second, I can see that. People buy those Funko Pop things all the time. I hate those. I effing hate Funko Pops. They're useless. It's a toy you never open. But they're going out of style, I think. I think those are the new Beanie Babies. I think they're just about done. They're in their late stage. I wouldn't invest in Funko if I were you, but this isn't financial advice. I am not an accountant. I don't know anything. Don't listen to me. But that's my opinion. Yeah, I think there's... I mean, they make them just like everything else. The collectible market has been... They've been trying to rig the collectible market for years in comics and games and toys. And what they do is... John Adams, Funko Pops are terrible. At least figures used to look like a character. Yeah. Don the Second, I don't get them either. Yeah. They're terrible. So what they do to game the system of collectability, what they used to do is they would just put things out. And whatever became collectible became collectible. Something would become rare. So like the rare thing in Star Wars was the Boba Fett. It was legend has it, it was a special Boba Fett that you could send away for that had a rocket pack where you could shoot the rockets out of the back of the pack. Before they made a new rule on toys because they didn't want a choking hazard and they glued the rockets in so you couldn't fire the rocket. Something like that. So that one's incredibly rare. It's worth a ton of money. You could only send away for it. It's Boba Fett. Whatever. That was just random circumstance. They were just trying to promote the movie, you know, with a giveaway that they didn't think that many people would be interested in. And truth be known, not that many people sent away for Boba Fett, which is why the figure's worth a fortune. Now what they do is when they ship hundreds and hundreds of these toys, they have a box of toys. Let's say it's Funko Pops. One of the toys in it might be rare. Two of the toys will be uncommon. This is how they pack magic cards, basically. The rest of them will probably be common. Then every other box, or every fourth box, might have an ultra rare figure in it. See, they randomly pack and they purposely put some toys in that are basically going to be worthless Funko Pops that anybody could get, and then some toys that collectors are going to go for that you can only get if you buy 50 cases of the damn thing. So if a retailer buys 50 cases, he'll get that super ultra rare Funko, and then he'll sell that one for $200, and the rest of them will sell like at a regular discounted price. And that's how they pack magic cards. And that is patented by the magic card people for cards, because that's what they think drove the magic card industry to the amazing heights that it's in now. John Adams, how do you feel about collecting comic books in those graded cases? They seem to be like a frisbee at best. You can't read it. Yeah, I'm against it. I mean, collectability has done everything to ruin this industry, and I have yet to see anybody else speak out about it. Creators should not be involved in collectability. They should not be involved in doing special covers or numbered covers or any of that bull crap. It's a joke. Just make your comic. If it's hot enough, it'll be collectible. It'll be collectible. My old stuff will be collectible. If I get a Netflix special and the Pineys becomes the biggest television show on the internet, all my stuff will be valuable. And it'll just be a matter of which item you have access to and who can get a hand on it. That's it. That'll be the only factor. And I mean, my stuff might be floating around now, and you might say, that's worthless. I never heard of that guy. But you don't know. You don't know what's going to be big. This is the way it used to be. Now, Marvel and DC, they're very much aware of that, and unfortunately, they try, I think, to play too much into it. Image definitely does. I think Image should stop doing that immediately. You know, the graded stuff, I'm completely against. It seals it. I mean, I understand why collectors do it. They're trying to maintain their price. I get it. If you have a comic book that's 50 years old, you might want to seal it and not actually read it because it's probably on the verge of falling apart. But you won't believe what they do to keep these collectibles going. John Adams, do you extend that to autographs in books? I don't know if autographs even mean anything. I mean, you know, I guess if you got your thing autographed and you want to keep it nice, maybe you put it in there. But if you can't see the autograph, I don't know why you would. It's just weird to me. I don't know. I like to read things. And as far as collectability goes, I don't have the kind of money. The only thing I collect Jersey Devil related stuff. That's it. That's all I collect. It's because that's my obscure thing. If I see a Jersey Devil record, or because a lot of guys down here do Jersey Devil songs, I'll buy it. If I see a Jersey Devil shirt or bumper sticker or anything with Jersey Devil related, chances are I'll buy it just to have it. I have on my back shelf there Jersey Devil Fixins, which was the company's now defunct. I don't know how the Fixins is probably no good to eat, but you're supposed to mix it, I think, with meat. It's like a chili. It's been on my shelf for about 20 years, so I don't think it's any good anymore. I hope it doesn't explode one day. That would be bad. But it was a local guy who did it, and he's got a cool logo and everything. So I buy obscure stuff like that. Is it going to be worth anything? I doubt it, but that's not why I bought it. These people who are trying to buy comic books like they're stock, you're wasting your time. You don't know what you're doing. You have to be a dealer to know what you're doing. I know a few guys who know what they're doing, and it is hard. It is hard. You think buying stocks, it's just like buying and selling stocks. It totally is. So for instance, when Marvel or DC comes out with a movie like Aquaman came out, right? It's going to affect the price of Aquaman comic books, maybe marginally, but it depends on how well the movie does, I don't think people are really into Aquaman 2, so it's probably not having any impact. Whereas, when the Venom movie first dropped, oh my God, the Venom books went through the roof. People were trying to scramble to get all the Venom books. It depends on the movie, it depends on the project, it depends on the comic. Clint Miller, on the shelf with the Taylor ham. There is no Taylor ham, Clint Miller. It is only pork roll. Thank you very much. I can't keep pork roll on my bookshelf. It would smell very bad in here. But yeah, so one of the ways, I mean, there's so many different ways to keep your collectibles nice, but one of them is if you have an old comic book, right? Let's say you found an old comic, I don't know, it's worth a lot of money, but it's about the condition it's in. And your comic book is in okay condition, like it's not falling apart, but it's kind of folded up and messed up. There's a guy who takes old comics, and what he does is he puts them on a press, and he uses the high pressure of the press to repress the comic so hard that it flattens out all the wrinkles in it and all the folds. So it's crisp again. So that it brings it up like half a point if you're trying to sell it. So then you have that done, then you put it in the thing and get it graded, and it'll grade higher because it's so nice and flat and it looks like it's new. But back in the day, people would get comics and they'd read them and stuff them in their pocket, and maybe they'd write on them, and if they were selling them, there's a famous store in Pittsburgh that literally has just about every comic ever printed, stuff going back to the 40s. And what the guy used to do, if he had an old issue of, say, Chilly Willy, he would write the price lightly on pencil on the cover of the comic. He had no bags, no boards, no nothing. So you could go back and You got every issue of Chilly Willy ever to your heart's desire, but you had to go through with an eraser and lightly erase off his pencil because he didn't bother to use stickers or bags or anything like that. JC, the cover isn't Adam Hughes, it's Terry Dodson. Look, I looked it up. He's pretty good. It's okay. I don't think it's Adam Hughes level, but he's all right, I guess. But I don't like the face on fire in that picture. I don't mind Ice, but I don't really like either one of these characters. They were just kind of throwaway characters for the Justice League, so Jeff Johns could make jokes. I don't think you should have brought him back at all, but this is DC. Oh, we own these IPs. Make these IPs valuable again. That's what they're doing, I think. So, I wouldn't bother. Fire and Ice are done. There's no more stories to tell with Fire and Ice. They were the girlfriends of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle back when they were like, you know, that's the comic I would love to see. I would love to see Booster Gold, Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, Fire and Ice back together again, dating and doing superhero stuff. JC, obvious Adam Hughes influence. Yeah, it looks like he's aping that. But Adam's better. I was at in fact, the comic book store I managed, Adam used to frequent it, I think, when he was just starting out. And my boss had a very early Adam Hughes sketch of like Firestorm before he was even very good. It was interesting. JC, finding a niche for these two? What if Fire and Ice were harpies? They sound like they're harpies in this comic. But anyhow, yeah, collectability. I mean, there's so many things going on with that. It's a joke. I mean, it's, you know, come to a show with me and you'll see, like, you know, a room full of guys. It's like a flea market. It's all this old stuff on tables and guys buying and selling based on what's popular, what people will pay. And some of it's cool and you'll look at it, and some of it you'll look at and go, who the hell would buy this? Depends on what you're into. For some guys, it's their nostalgia. You know, if you could find some old toy you used to have as a kid and you thought it was the coolest thing, I mean, I don't fault you for buying it. But that's not why people buy, like, Funkos. I don't think anybody will look back on the Funko phase and go, oh, I remember Funkos. I had so much fun playing them. No, people don't play with them. They buy them and they display them and hope they go up in value. For the most part, I've never heard of anyone opening the damn box, much less playing with one. JC, I see Adam Hughes at cons. He's got his wife right next to him. He's big and fat now, and he has a line of girls around his table. I think his wife fattened him up so he doesn't leave her for a groupie. Well, I've heard... First off, Adam's a pretty nice guy. I've met him a couple of times. But I heard that Adam is very happily married, and his wife helps him out. She manages him. You know, manages his money and his time and all that good stuff. So they work together as a pretty good team from what I hear. It's just that artists tend to get fat because they tend to sit at the drawing table too much. And he, you know, guy can work all he wants. A guy like Adam Hughes, he can work all he wants. You know, the moment he puts the pencils down is the moment he stops making money. So, but the girls like him because, well, girls love artists anyway. I had a friend, my friend who used to draw Batman, Tommy Castillo. He had girls around him all the damn time. He was single, though. He would pick up girls by drawing sketches and stuff. Oh, my God. They would just fall all over him. And he was a little tiny guy, and he could get just about any... You should have seen some of the women he got. I mean, it was nuts. He was classic for just walking into a place, and he would go, watch me pick up this girl. And he would. He would do it every time. I never saw him fail. No, wait, that's not true. One time I saw him fail. A fellow artist, and she didn't like him. Then I tried to swoop in, and that didn't work. JEC, Yeah, his wife is running everything at the table. It's funny. It's a funny visual. I lost 15 pounds as soon as I broke up with my ex. Then I realized she had been overfeeding me. Well, that's a thing I think women like to do. They like to nurture their man. I don't think they, a lot of them tend to want to fatten you up, but they want to, that's like a nurturing thing women like to do. They like to feed their man. Ah, I'm feeding you, honey. My ex did that to me. I mean, she would buy me candy, and I would tell her never buy me candy, and then she'd buy me candy. I'd be like, stop buying me candy. I don't want to eat the candy. But I don't know. I think that seems like a pretty universal thing with women. Girls like Adam Hughes because he draws pretty girls. That is true. That is true, and that's what my friend did. He would draw hot girls and tiny little lace bikini things, and girls like that. And then of course they'd be like, "Will you draw me?" Let's see. What else we got going on here? David Mamet slams wokeism and praises Shia LaBeouf to Bill Maher. I've never worked with a greater actor in my life. Wow, that's high praise from David Mamet. Shia LaBeouf, look at him getting some praise. I don't know. He seems like a lot of work, a lot of high maintenance. Shia LaBeouf, although he seems a little less now. Seems like he's calmed down a little bit. Now he got communion, and now he's Catholic, and so maybe he calmed down. Joan is like saying stuff to me. Hold on, Joan, come over here. No, we're not going outside right now. Come here, come here, come here. Yes, come here, come here. You're interrupting the show. Come here, come on, get in. There you go. Good girl. Yeah, you can't interrupt the show, Joan. You're ruining everything. So yeah. Shia LaBeouf seems like he's calmer now. Still seems like he's a bit of a handful. More on Night Swim. I mean, it's doing good, I guess, but it seems like the entire box office. What was the total here? Yeah, 85 million. That's not a lot for the box office. That's not very much. John Adams, there was a whole arc in the manga Bakuman where they hire a perv artist because he draws panty shots really well. Yeah, a lot of these artists can draw their own porn. They're really good at it. It's amazing, quite frankly. They just draw really hot women. My friend Tommy used to draw really hot women. His thing was to do a lot of horror and hot women. So he'd draw like, Alice in Wonderland with an impossibly short skirt, impossibly sexy heels, and then like some giant monstrous character from Alice in Wonderland looming over her and her looking up with doe eyes. I mean, he'd do it all the time. And he sold a ton of stuff. My God. Tommy could make like easily 5K at a show. Sometimes he'd make 10 just selling art. He knew how to hustle, boy. He could hustle. Let's see. Oh, come on, ads. Bounding into Comics. It's still got some good articles, though. Mark Ruffalo offers half-hearted apology after reposting AI-generated images of Donald Trump with young women to push Epstein Island narrative, blames Elon Musk for allowing so much disinformation on X. Yeah, so imagine the nerve of Mr. Hulk here. He posts these pictures that clearly look AI-generated to me, because they just look a little off. And Trump was completely cleared in the recent documents with Epstein. He's the only guy in that realm to ever give the police a statement about Epstein, a negative statement. And here you got Ruffalo. Ooh, look. I mean, that's low. that's beyond low. I mean, it's one thing to say, I don't like Trump and I have TDS and blah, blah, blah. But this is like, this is like outright lying, I think. Ruffalo, I've lost all respect for you. I had a tad respect for him because he always was a leftoid and he seemed pretty consistent. I mean, now you're going to lie. You're going to outright lie and shill AI images. That's pathetic. Don the Second, he's an idiot for falling for that. I would go a step further. I would say he didn't fall for it. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was hoping to cause more problems for Trump. He's just another part of the resistance. Oh, these people are so stunning and brave, aren't they? So stunning and brave. I'm worth millions of dollars. I'm so stunning and brave. Here's my thoughts on politics, everyone. Yeah, I bet when people start waving American flags like it's going out of style again, you suddenly change your tune. Look, as a guy who's 57 and probably the oldest guy on the stream, I remember the George W. Bush years. And let me tell you something. It was like night and day. So the George W. Bush years, which I wasn't a fan of, by the way, being the contrarian that I am. We went from, war is bad to let's invade them. And everybody was like, I don't see your yellow ribbon on. Like, yellow ribbon? Yeah, to support the troops. Why aren't you supporting the troops, dude? And I was like, I can support the troops without wearing a stupid yellow ribbon. Don't tell me what to wear, jackhole. I mean, these are the conversations I had back during the Bush years. People were the complete opposite. So, for as woke as they are now, back during the Bush years, everybody was like, we got to go over there and fight them over there so we don't fight them here. These terrorists can't win. They're such sheep for propaganda. Clint Miller, got you beat, Tony. 66 and 67 in 3 weeks. Oh, my God. Oh, my God, Clint. I didn't realize you were that old. Well, age before beauty, my friend. Yeah, well, you remember then. Back me up on this, Clint. You remember people waving American flags. Suddenly everybody's into the troops. Thank you for your service. Oh, like, calm down. Does anybody want to think for a minute about the weapons of mass destruction that don't exist in Iraq? No. Shut up. We've got to beat these terrorists. They probably did it. That's the way people were. They were just caught up in the new thing. Clint Miller, yes, sir. See? Confirmed. Thank you. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane. And now we're into, I don't know, everybody defends Don the Second. And here I am at 22. Ha ha ha. Yeah, man, you cannot imagine how over the top waving American flags people were in that era. It was just ridiculous. John Adams, I'll hazard that I'm the youngest. I was in grade school for 9/11. Oh, man. Clint Miller, after the 60s and 70s, baby killers. Yep. During the Vietnam era, I wasn't really around for that. I sort of caught a little bit when I was a kid. But that's what they would, coming out of Vietnam, they would scream at soldiers and call them baby killers and stuff. John Adams, well, Don beats me. I'm a decade at least. Don beats me by a decade at least. All right. We're learning a lot about the ages of the stream today. So we went from Vietnam, everybody was sort of down on the troops, although I think some of that's a little bit hyperbolic. But then, the 80s kind of came back. Then the 90s kind of went away. Wasn't particularly anti-war, but wasn't particularly pro-war. And then in the 2000s, they turned it up to 11. It was nuts. It was just flat out nuts. People bought into the propaganda. People signed up for the army. People were like, oh, I'm joining the army. And I would be like, why? Why are you joining the army? Oh, I got to go over there, man. I got to do something about this. They were all hyped to join it. Don the Second, I only remember the tail end of the Bush admin when the narrative started to change. Yeah. Yeah, and it was the same thing that's going to happen, or that is happening right now. The narrative's finally starting to crack, and people are going to start jumping ship left and right. You watch. You watch. The people just start, oh, I never believed this woke stuff. No, 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 no. You got me all wrong. I didn't believe it. Yeah, I said some things. Oh, yeah, that is a picture of me, but I didn't believe it. Yeah, no, I'm against it now. You watch. Clint, if you fight communists, our communists, aka Democrats, get after you. Yeah, but that's not going to be. Look, Peter Boghossian, who's one of the guys who worked with James Lindsay on the grievance studies. If you've read that, I highly recommend, or at least watch the videos on it, like I did. He's predicting that the Democrats are going to flip on the woke stuff within the next few months. Before the election, they're going to flip hard on the woke stuff in an attempt to be cynically like, no, 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 no. We're very much against that. You watch. You watch them drop the rainbow people like a hot rock. Yeah, they're not going to even remember what trans people are when you ask them. John Adams, we watched the footage of the towers getting hit mid-class. Everything else stopped for the day. Oh, man, rough. I got a call from my friend. I was asleep, and I picked up the phone half asleep, and he went, dude, they just hit the towers. I'm like, what towers? He's like, the towers in New York. I'm like, that can't be true. And I hung up and went back to sleep. Don the second, it's weird that 9/11 is a huge joke. People my age, to people my age now. Well, because back in, I guess when you were a kid, they were so hyperbolic about it. You know, there were commemorative coins and there were comics. They took advantage of it in comics. They did a bunch of 9/11 comics, weird 9/11 comics about that day. There was a crazy story Joe Quesada did about firemen, you know, and then they had all these superheroes. Oh no, the true heroes, the EMTs, and they would bow down to them. It was this bizarre time in comics too. John Adams, well, there was that thing about Bin Laden on TikTok recently. Yes, I remember that. Basically, people reading about or hearing Bin Laden's speech about America from that era. And I remember that speech too. He basically sort of just, people back in the 2000s focused on the part of the speech where Bin Laden said, for the people who heard it, nobody heard it, because that was another thing. The narrative didn't want to promote Bin Laden, so forget about what that dude said. We're going to just kill everybody. But you could learn a lot from listening to it. Unfortunately, the people on TikTok, of course, learned the wrong lesson because they're a bunch of idiots. But what you learn from a lot of the Bin Laden speeches is his plan was to literally bankrupt America. He said, we can fly the Al-Qaeda flag on a mountain in the middle of nowhere, and the idiots in America will mobilize their troops and cost themselves millions of dollars. And he's absolutely right on that point. So for a while, that was the case. They keep announcing, oh, we found some more Al-Qaeda guys here. We just bombed the place back to the Stone Age. Oh, it's great. We killed 4 militants. And then like a few weeks would go by and it was like, oh yeah, you know those 4 militants that we killed? It turns out there were 12 of them, and they were actually people attending a wedding, and they were all murdered. And none of them were combatants. That would be the news. Of course, that news story would get buried, but the story about killing the militants was always on the front page. Yeah, so it is very weird, the turnaround. But Bin Laden was an a-hole. He was also, and this is the weird thing about leftoids, and the sheep, they don't look into anything. Like Bin Laden was one of the richest people. You know, he was part of the Saudi, you know, I don't think he was part of the royal family, but his family is like uber rich, like uber mega rich. And he lived a life of luxury his whole life. He basically another socialist commie, when you get right down to it. What did he want? He wanted a centralized government, except, instead of based on communism, it would have been based on a religion. But Clint Miller, us boomers and the Gen Xers tend to be pro-Israel. Wait until the pro-Palestinian millennials, Gen Alphas, take the helm. Yeah, I'd like to think maybe they would learn their lesson and just say, let's stay out of this, as I've been saying for many years. But, unfortunately, I've been predicting for a while that people in Washington are going to turn like they kind of turned in the UK against Israel, essentially because, you see it in the anti-Semitic rhetoric coming out of the left now. The same thing happened in the UK. It got so bad in the UK. What the leader of the Labour, one of the leaders, I forget his name. He's basically a communist, but he had to come out and say, "Oh, there's no anti-Semitism in the ranks of Labour," and they purged a few people and got themselves slightly right on the issue, which I think the Democrats are long overdue. So maybe they will purge their ranks of anti-Semites, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And unfortunately, they put too many of the anti-Semites in the pipeline. But a lot of these kids will drop it. A lot of these kids will they don't have any principles. Yeah, some of them are saying anti-Semitic things, but they would say anything because they're caught up in the bigger issue. Although anti-Semitism is an issue, I'm not discounting it, but the bigger issue is the communism. They're caught up in the communism. They're caught up in the dialectic of that. Well, since Israel is more powerful than the Palestinians, and therefore they are the oppressors, and we must do everything we can to help the Palestinians because that's the way the world works. It's all about power to them. They see things in power dynamics, and they will always see it that way until they're sort of deprogrammed out of their communism. John Adams. Humza Youssef. I know that name. Trying to remember. I don't know if we want to go down a rabbit hole. But yeah, it's not a good time. But things are turning around. Harvard's finally falling apart, and now some of the other dominoes will start to fall. The next step will probably be to oust the board at Harvard, possibly just wreck Harvard until there's nothing left of it. Close the damn place down. Some of the other places are starting to wake up. Some of them are not. They're going to go down with Harvard. Look at Mark Cuban. Speaking of DEI and communism, while a lot of businesses, not enough, are starting to say, oh, screw this DEI stuff, we're going to get rid of it. Mark Cuban just doubled down on it in his organization in the Mavericks. And he is opening himself up to huge discrimination lawsuits, I believe. I am not a lawyer, but I believe it is illegal to discriminate in the United States based on race, based on gender. I think he's eventually going to be paying a lot of money out for lawsuits thanks to his inclusion of DEI into his business. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, quite frankly. See, speaking of Batman, John Adams, here is a Batman comic that they're touting. The art is amazing, but not much else. So, they don't, if you want to see good art and Batman wailing on dudes, maybe, but if it's got no good story, is it really worth it? Oh, this was this week. Steamboat Willie, of course, went into the public domain. And now everybody's trying to use him for various horrible purposes because they can. So a horror movie dropped, or the trailer dropped. It's called Mickey's Mousetrap. Another one's dropping soon. I forget who else announced they're doing stuff with Steamboat Willie or whatever. I don't know. I think it's stupid. I mean, I think it would be cool if you have a comic already that has wacky cartoon characters like Steamboat Willie that you can include him, but I think it's a little weird to do a horror movie on Steamboat Willie. John Adams, that's how I feel about McKay Moon Knight series. Great art, awful story. Yeah, there's just no writers in comics anymore. They just, they don't know how to write stories. The guys they hire are, look, I complained about comics in the 70s, not really the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s certainly, but now, I just don't even read comics. I can't even stomach these comics. They're so bad. Even the guys that people call good, I just don't see it. When you compare it to a guy like Chris Claremont, there's really no comparison. Claremont, a guy like Jack Kirby, that's the average day-to-day guys, they were terrible. Chuck Dixon's pretty good. I like him. I always call him the Tom Clancy of comics. After a while, some of his stuff sounded the same, but he was writing half the comics in the DC and Marvel universe, so that was bound to happen. But, Peter David was decent. Mark Waid had his moments back in the day. But most guys at comics, even in those days, weren't very good. You would just read a generic superhero story. Now those guys, oh my God, the bar is so low. Look at those panels from Welcome to Smallville. They're horrific. They're not just bad. Like, you'd have to, I don't know. I don't think I could write that poorly. Like, purposely. I really don't. Those are awful. Those are painful. It's just amazing how bad they are. It's kind of an accomplishment if you don't care about comics. Something that bad. The average normie would look at that page if they never saw a comic before, and if you said to them, hey, you want to read a current superhero comic, and you handed them that comic, they would come back to you and go, there's no way this is a real comic. This has to be a joke. This has to be a satire of a comic. This doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. But that's where they are. They're at the level of crazy, of the level of leftoidism where, part of the deal is demoralization. Part of what the communists do are demoralization, and that means making everything ugly and bad. So you have no place to go. There's no recourse. There's no salvation. Everything you once loved is awful and ugly and sad and depressing. And that's what their comics are now. Everything about them is sad and depressing. Even if you say, okay, they're just bad writers, but they're still trying to do a story. No, they're trying to make it dark and depressing. What is more dark and depressing than some woman superhero with superpowers? And keep in mind, Fire and Ice both have superpowers, but they spend their time lecturing people over their pronouns. What is more awful than that? They're not even making jokes. They're just lecturing people. It's nuts. It's absolutely insane. Everybody at DC should be fired. Everyone. I would fire everybody at DC. Put me in charge of DC and I'll turn it around. And I'll start by firing everybody, shutting the doors, remodeling the office, and starting over with a completely new staff. That would be my first act. We'd be closed down for probably about a year. We'd pay out everybody, get everything done, and then start over with a brand new staff, a non-woke staff. Anybody with pronouns in their bio, no, we don't need you, bye. Anybody who, talks a bunch of smack about the Ukraine or Joe Biden or any of that crap, nope, no thank you, goodbye. See ya. Don't need you. I seen your resume. You're unqualified. Get out. And I would just start clean with an executive staff and a bunch of editors who are professionals. And I wouldn't tolerate a single moment of unprofessionalness. And I would probably hire a couple of guys just to fire them to show everybody I meant business. Then I would start hiring the talent. Now, some of the talent, some of the old talent would eventually come back, but initially I would not hire any of the old talent. It would be all people who had either hadn't worked since the great wokeness came upon us, or it would be all new people. And they would be held to a standard. And it would be a professional standard. You got to make your deadlines. And you can't, there'd be a social media rules. You can't go on social media and badmouth us. You can't say a damn thing except the comic's coming out and it's great. Please buy the comic. That's it. You can't get in arguments with fans. Nothing. You get into an argument one time with a fan, you're done. Your contract's canceled. You're breach contract. You're out. I would lower the boom on these people. And then we would start making comics. We would have real writers' meeting talking about superhero comics. And it'd be thrilling. There'd be no politics in it for at least the first 3 years. Then I might let a little creep back in. Not woke politics, but like regular mentioning the mayor or whatever, that kind of stuff. And, you know, I would put a moratorium on all the old bad guys. I said, don't bring any of them back for the next 2 to 3 years. Just make up new guys for the regular superheroes to fight. And we'll just move forward and see what happens. And they'll never let it happen. Because that would start making us money. That would start making the comics popular again. They'd start making money. They'd be thrilling. They'd be fun. They'd end on cliffhangers. Crazy stuff would happen. There'd be fighting and action. All the males would come back. All the comic book stores would start selling again. All the women would complain. But those would be woke women who don't buy our comics, so who cares? I would completely ignore them. And, you know, when one of the woke women would rear her ugly head and start saying, like, oh, you know, DC Comics is now a haven for toxic masculinity, I would say nothing. I would completely ignore them. Because you ignore them, the fans don't care. Not the normies I would go after. And my goal would be to sell millions of comics. I would push Batman to 1 million. That would be my goal. To sell 1 million copies of a single issue of Batman. And I could do it if I had a company behind me that was worth a damn. But these people aren't behind anybody. They're not interested in doing a serious comic. And I would, you know, again, I would change the entire model of the comic book industry. I would make the comics cheap. They would be 100 pages for $5, and it would be the Batman book, the Superman monthly book, not monthly, monthly. You know, it'd be like there'd be about 10 comics coming out of DC, but they would all be 100 pages, $5. And they would be anthologies, and they would be big, and people would buy them because they'd be, holy crap, 100 pages for $5? I'm totally buying this. And you watch. I would bury Marvel. Marvel would, inside of 2 years, Marvel would be in a full-blown panic trying to copy the same exact thing. But they won't do it. They wouldn't dare. Because they're not really interested in selling comics. It's not important right now. And that would cost a lot of money. It would take 2 or 3 years before it would start to work. Before the returns would start to come in and we'd start selling regularly hundreds of thousands of copies. That would be the return. And that's down the road. It's down the road. So, anyhow, what time is it? Oh my God, it's 10 o'clock. Let's start to wrap up here. Let's see if there's any more stories from this week. They race swapped Watson. CBS is doing a Sherlock Holmes. They're going to make Watson black for some reason. They went after Dave Chappelle again, of course. The guy who directed Saltburn apparently was working on a Zatanna movie, which is no longer happening, so that's one good thing. over at Deadline, otherwise known as Variety 2.0. Mary Lou Retton, another blast from the 80s, says she almost died from pneumonia. Teaser promotes full interview coming. Well, I'm glad she's not dead, but I don't want to see that interview. Sounds boring. I mean, you got sick. It's sad, but you recovered, so that's good. Yeah, pretty much the same stuff. Judd Apatow says putting Barbie in Oscars adapted screenplay category is insulting. I don't know. Who cares about the Oscars anymore, Apatow? The ratings have been down. I think they came up a little bit last year, but I just don't care. Nobody's going to the damn movies. Who cares about the Oscars? There's too many award shows. I don't know. Maybe get your act together and make a halfway decent movie again. Bleeding Fool. Artist Greg Capullo reportedly handling interiors back at Marvel Comics. So he's not bad. Capullo's pretty good. Jim Henson's Labyrinth and Dark Crystal acquired by Shout Comics. So if you're into those two IPs. But again, it's like, David Bowie's dead. It's just some guys licensing the IPs. Yeah, they may like it and worship the ground that Jim Henson walked upon, but they're not Jim Henson. It's their vision. It's not his. I don't know how good that'll be. I mean, I guess if you're dying for more Labyrinth and Dark Crystal stuff, maybe. Paracomics aim to support victims of last year's Maui disaster. Well, that's nice. It's called Maui Strong. How the Mighty DC Has Fallen comic features Justice League themed drag show. So there you go, DC. Where's Fire and Ice? Clint Miller, Jim Henson is also dead. Yeah, it's like I don't care about a comic done by nobodies about Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. I mean, that's an old movie. So what? Like, there's not even any more stuff to... I mean, I guess Dark Crystal, maybe. Maybe you could do one if you had a really good idea. I was a big fan of Big Trouble in Little China. You could probably get me to buy that comic if you licensed that, but, I'd probably just be disappointed in it. It's a great movie. It would be tough to live up to that movie in my eyes. I think it's a lose-lose proposition. I think you're better off doing an original thing. But this is another disgrace. I mean, who cares? Why are you putting this in a comic about superheroes that are supposed to punch bad guys in the face? No one cares about your stupid drag queens. Oh, there's Fire and Ice. Okay, so they worked Fire and Ice in it, everybody. So good. I'm glad more women are in comics because and men dressed as women. Because that's what comics were missing. Remember the thrill and fun days of comics, everyone? Well, now they're back. Only men are dressing as women. Hey, everybody. Maybe I could dress as a woman, too. You sure can, Timmy. You sure can. Yeah, maybe if I put on a dress, one of the DC guys will hire me. Because they'll have to. Well, you'll have to hire me or you're a transphobe. Oh, okay. Well, here you go, Mr. DiGerolamo. Sorry, Ms. DiGerolamo. I don't know what my gender title is today. I'll get back to you on that. Just call me Awesome Person. Okay, Awesome Person, here you go. Please don't talk to me anymore so I don't get fired. Ugh. Pathetic. It's pathetic, DC. Again, I would fire all these people. But I'm the one who innovated the drag show issue. Yes, you're fired more than anybody. In fact, I'm going to have the security guards push you down the stairs and throw your box of crap after you. I mean, what is this? It doesn't make any sense in a comic. It really doesn't. These aren't even... They're not even good drag queens. who in their right mind would even go to a drag show theme show based off of superheroes? Like, why would you see that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Drag shows used to be a gay thing, right? It was like Diana Ross, Barbara Streisand, Cher, like singers, not superheroes. Women, again, I'll say it again, women don't read comics. They don't like superheroes. They like shoes. They like brunch. They like relationships. Superheroes, not on the list. There's a handful of fangirls that like it. There's nothing wrong with them. But they are not on the middle of the bell curve. They're far at the end. Way at the end. They're oddballs. They're weirdos. At least in a group of women. They'd be the weirdos. Most women don't read comics. Don't believe me? Ask a woman what kind of comics she reads. Ask an average woman. Just ask, find a woman on the street and say, "Excuse me, ma'am, how many comic books do you read a week?" And then she'll just probably laugh at you. I was just at my event today. It was a market. It's all women, okay? The markets are generally mostly women. They're women selling knickknacks, cupcakes, jewelry, clothes, all kinds of crap you hang in your house. Decorations. They go, "Ooh, it's cute. Oh, that's cute. Oh, I like that." That's all you hear. All I heard all day. 90% of the customers were women. Okay? I sold, I think, like 15 books and 7 comics. The comics were all gifts. They were all gifts for other people. I think all were not women. Except maybe one. Maybe one was for a woman who likes horror and creepy stuff, which is a little different than liking comics. And again, my stuff's different because it's a Jersey Devil. But, you know, nobody bought. I had copies of Jetta Ray Adventures, which is created by Dan DiGerolamo. It's basically Archie's in space. Didn't sell any of those. Didn't sell any of my fantasy comic. Didn't sell any of my comic, The Fix. You know, they bought Jersey Devil stuff because I'm in South Jersey and I could sell Jersey Devil stuff to anyone. I could literally go outside my house now, set up the table, and if I wait long enough and somebody walks down my street, I guarantee you I could sell them a book because I'm in South Jersey and there's at least a 40% chance they'll go, "Oh, yeah, Jersey Devil, sure." That's how easy it is to sell my books in South Jersey, by the way. But if I just had straight up superhero comics and the customer is a woman, 95% chance it'll be a no thank you, and they'll chuckle and walk away. That's based on my personal experience as a guy who's been selling comics for like, I don't know, 30 years. Go to a comic book convention if you don't believe me. It's all men. Handful of women. They've got babies. They're watching the kids, or they're supporting their boyfriend or husband. That's it. Once in a while, you get one fangirl who's into it all on her own. It's rare, but it happens. So, who's this appeal to? It definitely doesn't appeal to men. You could literally cut every man out of the equation for a comic like this. Except maybe gay men, but even gay men would look at that and go, I think they would be unimpressed with the drag queens. You know? Even feminized men would say, it doesn't seem very fancy. So, I don't even think you're appealing to the audience you're supposedly going after. Again, I think it's partly just demoralization. This comic isn't about to appealing to another audience. It's about punishing the audience they have. So they're demoralized, so their heroes cannot function, so they have so every time you look in this direction, you know there's no recourse. There's no comfort. They want to make sure, loud and clear, you have no fun or no sucor. Look up that word. That was a fancy word. At DC Comics. You will not have any fun. You will always be lectured at here. And every time you check in, you'll just go, oh, crap. But that's okay. I make stuff, and so do a lot of other people. So, F these guys. The Wrap. More on Wonka. Elsie Stefanik calls imprisoned January 6 rioters hostages, echoing Trump. Yeah, I agree. Oh, that sounds sad. Al Jazeera bureau chief mourns fifth family member killed by Israeli airstrike. Terrible. Not good. There's an article on Jeffrey Wright. Hang on, Joan. Oh, this was sad. Cindy Morgan died. She was 69. She was the love interest in Caddyshack. Classic movie if you haven't seen it. She's great in that. But she was 69, but the article was interesting. She was one of the biggest faces in Hollywood back in the 80s. She was in everything. She was in Falcon Crest. She was on The Love Boat. She was in a bunch of other movies too. But she was 69, and when she died, she was found by her roommate, which indicates to me, monetarily, probably wasn't doing that well. I'm not trying to throw any shade at her, but it just goes to show you that Hollywood, not everybody's a millionaire. And she was pretty famous. I mean, Caddyshack was a big movie. Falcon Crest was a huge TV show when TV was still big. And yet somehow she didn't die in a mansion. So, save your money, folks. Especially if you're famous. And finally, at Cosmic Book News, I think we talked about Doctor Who enough. Oops. Didn't want to hit that. What the hell, man? Not what I wanted. Metamucil ad. How did that pop up? What else was happening this week? Yeah, more Doctor Who. Done ranting about that. The Marvels ends box office with less than Birds of Prey with China factored in. That's pretty funny. And comic book artist part of database used to train Mid-Journey AI. So they're using Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, Frank Miller, Dave Gibbons, and John Romita Jr. to train the Mid-Journey AI, which means oh my God, John Adams just sent me $10, Joan. Now you can stop moaning. See, now you get nice treats, thanks to John Adams. Thanks to our president, our former president. Joan gets a treat. Thank you, John. Let's read his. Funding a Ripperverse set purchase for a possible future review. Thank you and everyone else in the chat for humoring my comments today and sidetracking the conversation. Hey, no worries. That's what it's all about. Clint Miller. Didn't Don Adams of Get Smart fame live in an apartment complex? He was huge in the late 60s. That might be true, but here, Joan, you got your treat. Here, I'll put it on the floor. Here. That probably is true. Oh my God, that is 100. John Adams, are you nuts? A Ripperverse set purchase. What the hell's a Ripperverse set purchase? Well, now you got to send me a link. Ripperverse set purchase. Okay. All right. I guess I got to go over to Ripperverse and try to figure out how to purchase an entire set. Thank you, John Adams. Oh, man. I'm going to have to read Isom. Oh, that sounds awesome, actually. Yeah, Don Adams. That's very possible. He was pretty up there when he died, but like he was huge in the 60s on Get Smart, and that was about it. But that was at a time when residuals from TV shows weren't that great. So like Bob Denver of Gilligan's Island fame, he was Gilligan, and a few others, big stars, didn't really see a ton of money off those TV shows. They got paid initially, but they didn't see a lot of back end, depending on the deals they cut. Don Adams was a little more famous than some of those guys, so he might have seen some, but I don't know. I don't think he did. He did do the voice of Inspector Gadget, though. I know that was one of his last gigs. So, yeah, I don't know. He might have... holy cow, $100. Is that how much it costs, by the way, at the Ripperverse? $100 for the whole set? So it's possible he just didn't make the money. But Cindy, the woman I mentioned, she was big in the 80s, and by that time the syndication money changed. So she should have been paid fairly decently, especially since she was in movies, and a hit movie, and Caddyshack was a decent hit, I believe. I mean, it certainly got a lot of play downstream. But she wasn't in much after that, so I don't know how she spent her money. Maybe she blew it all. I mean, a lot of these guys, they blow all their money because they see no end to it, and they live a highfalutin lifestyle, and then one day it slows down, and they go, well, I can keep this lifestyle, and then it slows down more, and they go, well, I can probably still keep this lifestyle, and then it slows down more, and like, well, I could sell my car and just have one house, and then it slows down more, and like, I'm not getting enough work. And then it, kind of goes to hell. Maybe that happened to Don Adams and Cindy, but I don't know. Don Adams was very funny, though, I thought. He, I hope he was comfortable, at least. But it's hard when you're working in the arts. It's hard. Wow. $100. I'm now going to have to go to the river first. Thank you, John Adams. I really appreciate that. Wow. Went to 0 to 100 on that. I didn't expect that at all. I was not expecting that. All right, so final thoughts, if anybody has any in the chat. What's coming up for me? Let's see. I'm going to be at, what is it called? It's Cape May Care, I think. On Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a talk for one of the senior living places. And then on next Saturday, I will be at WildCon in Wildwood, which I did last year and I did extremely well at. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope I do well again. It was strange to do a show in January last year where I actually did very well. And the weather wasn't too bad either, which was also strange because it was Wildwood. It's literally on the beach at the convention center. It was cold. I mean, it was January, but it wasn't freezing. Like, I mean, you ever been to the ocean in January in New Jersey? It's usually bitter, bitter cold. But it was okay. Like, it was tolerable. You had to wear a coat, and I think I wore gloves, but it was fine. It wasn't like a foot of snow. John Adams, Ripperverse has a catch-up deal. 3 comic books they've published so far for $65. Okay, so that's the one I should look for. Got to factor in YouTube tax. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. Okay, all right. I'll get over there later today and pick that up. It's been a long time since I read a comic other than my own. So this should be fun. I will definitely do a video on it then. I'll do a review and see what all the fuss is about at the Ripperverse, and we'll see how it goes. What I think. I think I'll probably like it. I don't know. It looks fine. I mean, some people complained about the art. There was some controversy about that, I remember. There's a bit of controversy going back and forth now about Eric July and Ethan Van Sciver. They're not really going at it, but there's a little bit of controversy. I hate to see guys like that fight. I don't think there's any reason to have that drama at their level. I mean, I'm not throwing any shade at them. They're doing very well, but I don't think the drama helps anybody. I really don't. I mean, you can argue that it helped Derek July because, you know, and even Ethan, that it drives their YouTube, you know, memberships or whatever. But I got to think in the long run that hurts them more than it helps them. But I don't know. They both have huge YouTube followings, so go figure. I don't know. I wish I had gotten in YouTube a little earlier. I missed the boat. I started doing it, but I couldn't quite figure out how to videotape anything and upload it in a convenient way. The Chuck Dixon one has weird art, and there's an attorney whose facial hair is very inconsistent panel to panel. You'll see. Oh, interesting. Oh, good. So I can get Alpha Core too. I like Chuck Dixon. Keep in mind I'm a writer, so I'll probably just like blow past the art, but unless it's really noticeable. But you know. But I'm very interested in seeing Alpha Core. Clint Miller, when will we see the Pineys book 14? Well, I just finished it, so March. We're on track for March. I already told Vig what I want on the cover, and I haven't seen any preliminaries yet, but he'll probably send me something in the next month, and then hopefully I get it before March, and then hopefully I got to start working on 15 because I need to get that done by the end of March. So that's my schedule. When one book is done, I got to have another one just finished. Right, you know, I have to have it done enough so I can send it to the copyright office so I get the copyright back in time, because you cannot publish on Amazon unless you have a copyright. You must fill out the forms at the copyright office to publish on Amazon, and you have to have that number. So without that number, you can't publish. So, but everything's uploaded, so I just waiting for. Usually the copyright office is pretty good. Last time they got back to me in 2 months, so I should have that back, and then the cover, and we should be good on 14. 14 really came out good. It's going to be a lot of pirate stuff. 15, I'm not sure yet. I'm still sort of gathering some info, some intel. I don't want to give it away, but I probably will be doing the Mafia stuff in 15. That's what I'm thinking. I almost did the Mafia stuff for 12 or 13, but I think I'm going to do it for 15. I'm like 80% there. I have to do some more research. And it's going to be very North Jersey oriented because of that. So it's going to be a lot of Mafia stuff and North Jersey stuff. And then 16, which will come out in October, is probably going to be short stories again, because I want to do another short story one. So people really like the short stories in 10. And I already wrote one of the short stories. I tried to sell it to Iron Age for one of their issues, but they didn't want it for whatever reason. I never got feedback back. But then I said, oh, I'll just save it for the short stories. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be very different, I think. So I'm very psyched. Clint Miller, North Jersey, yuck. Yeah, I know. That's going to be the attitude of Hemingway all through the book, I think. But you know, have to do a North Jersey one because I set it up in book 11. I like the short story in Hem's voice. Yes, I think I have to do another one of them. That was fun as well. I don't want to do too many of them because I don't want to burn people out on that. But yeah, 16 is going to be very interesting. I've got it mostly. 16 I've got plotted out better than 15, really. But yeah, I got to do some more research, and I got to book some more gigs. I'm looking at my calendar. That's what I always look at on this side. I need more dates for February. Anyhow, wrapping it up. So thank you, John Adams, for your generous donation. Thank you all for tuning in today. It was a fun live stream. I am probably going to have to post this one in 2 parts because it was 3.5 hours long. They're getting bigger and bigger every time, aren't they? Holy cow. So I got to do some more videos. I got to do the Piney podcast. Holy Christ. Sorry, it's 10:30. I got to get going. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you in the next one.